conference for Luka in Los Angeles. Rob Pelinka sitting there looking every bit of a Rob Lowe lookalike. We'll get to all of that. Craig Bolerjack is going to join us on the show. We'll talk about the Jazz small involvement there and what it means in the grander scheme of things for the league itself. Sarah Todd is also going to join us to talk the same thing, the trade, the Utah Jazz rolling the trade. At noon, Jerem Jordan will stop by. Plenty of college hoops to discuss, but more importantly, it is Big 12 schedule release day. And then we'll, of course, look at the Super Bowl preview. It is Super Bowl week. We're just a few days away from the sports holiday of the year, as the Super Bowl will take place this Sunday. Jeff Schwartz will swing by in our 1 o'clock hour, the NFL veteran and gambling expert. Maybe he's got some good prop bets to give us as well. If you're on the Big 12 newsletter, you knew this already. You knew it was coming today. They announced last week that they were going to give us the 2025 football schedule Tuesday. That is today. And we have a Utah football schedule, a BYU football schedule, a Big 12 football schedule for every single team. And I want to come on here. I promise you, I want to come on here and I want to go game by game. And I want to tell you why, this is being a road matchup is important, or this being a home matchup is important. And all I can look at when I see this schedule is the holy war, Utah versus BYU, being played on October 18th. The rivalry game, the best rivalry game remaining in the Big 12 Conference after the Red River Shootout left, uprooted itself and moved off to SEC country. The best, I would say most historic. I'm obviously biased towards this game, and we probably all are, but certainly the most heated, the most interesting, the most culturally significant, relevant, and fascinating. The Holy War is not being treated by the Big 12 Conference like the best rivalry game in the conference. It's not even being treated like a real rivalry game, like an in-state. And let's put it here, nationally televised, so that it can stand alone as a feature. And, of course, where BYU was at and where Utah was at in the rankings at that point and in the results at that point made it a lot more interesting. And the game itself ended up playing out to be incredible, and tons of controversy, comments after, comments during, officiating, problems, the fan bases drawing back and forth once again. You would have thought that Brett Yormark and company would sit down and look at that game and say, look, whether we're mad at certain people in this rivalry or not, whether we think that, Utah is going to bounce back and be the great program they've been or not, whether we think BYU is going to be able to continue this dominance or not, this game delivers. This game is the best we've got to roll out on rivalry weekend. And the conclusion they came to was, you know what, let's just throw it on October 18th. What are you doing, Big 12 Conference? What are you... This is the best rivalry game west of the Mississippi now. The Apple Cup is devalued because Oregon is a juggernaut who has turned its eyes towards national championships. The Civil War game is now, I said the Apple Cup is devalued. The Apple Cup, Washington and Washington State are no longer conference opponents. The Oregon-Washington rivalry is not what it used to be because Oregon has turned its eyes towards national championships, and because of that, absolutely cannot be as focused on the Washington rivalry. Washington they'll swing back up under Jed Fish. They didn't have a great year this year, but I think they'll be okay. But they're not going to be able to keep pace with a program that is now a national powerhouse juggernaut. BYU and Utah, as much as you don't like me saying this here on the home of the Utes, BYU and Utah are back on relatively equal footing on the recruiting front, on the NIL front, on the national relevance, in the best case scenario front. And I say best case scenario because it's going to require BYU to have another year like this year consistently to where people respect that program the way that they have grown to respect Utah. This rivalry game being played on October 18th is egregious malpractice, unfortunate oversight by whoever is scheduling these games. If you're the Big 12 Conference, this is a surrender. This is a capitulation. This is you saying to the powers that be, you know what? We don't want to go up against these other big rivalry games on rivalry weekend. Even though that has historically been the place where you play the in-state rivalry games. And even though we're doing that for Arizona and Arizona State, we're going to allow them to play their in-state rivalry game. We're going to put them on that stage, that rivalry weekend stage. We're going to acknowledge that game, that territorial cup that's been played for 100-plus years. We're going to say, you know what, that game belongs there. But this Utah-BYU game, we're going to put it just past the midpoint of the season, all right? Everyone okay with that? The answer is no. And if there's a point that they are trying to prove by moving this up in the schedule, there's two places where it would be okay to play a BYU-Utah rivalry game to give it its proper due on your schedule. The first conference game of the year or the last conference game of the year. You say, you know what, we're going to start the season off with a bang. Not even the first conference game of the year. Make it the first game of the year or the last game of the year. And say, you know what, this is such a big hitter. This is such an important game. This is so significant, not just in the state of Utah, but on the national landscape of what rivalry football is, what college football rivalries are still supposed to mean on the sporting landscape. This is a game you have to have your eyes on if you're part of the national college football audience. That's the proper place for the Holy War. And instead, you're going to get it on October 18th. All right? The same week, who else is playing? Arizona, Houston, Arizona State, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, UCF, Cincinnati. No, UCF, West Virginia, excuse me. Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. I mean, what are we? It's disrespect for the rivalry to just throw it in somewhere. And if the acknowledgement or if the justification for this is, you know what, we want to give it a weekend in college football where there's no other big games being played so that it can be one of the big, like, national, it has a better shot of, you know, hosting college game day or whatever. I'll listen to that for about 3 seconds, and then I'll say, is this one of the great rivalry games in college football? And the Big 12 answer has to be yes, because that's the truth. And then my response to that is, where are the great games in college football rivalries played? Where do we put those games? Well, we put those games at the end of the year. That's right. Put this game at the end of the year. There's too much of this, oh, we're just happy to be here kind of mentality in college football now, especially in the Big 12, especially with a conference like this that serves as the life raft and the safe landing spot for teams that would otherwise find themselves where Oregon State and Washington State are. And everyone wants to play nice and be a good soldier. And sometimes that's the right idea. In this case, I don't know if Mark Harlan can march into Brett Yormark's office at this point. I don't know how much longer he's got to kind of like be on best behavior because of what happened after the BYU-Utah game this past season. But knowing what I know about Mark, he's ready to turn the page. The conference should be ready to turn the page on that. I need Tom Homo and Mark Harlan to hop on a little PJ together, get on that private flight together, fly on down to the Big 12 offices, march into Brett Yormark's probably palatial office. Yormark with the tight suits and the private car service. You know that he's got just like this great view from his office. You walk in there and you say, dude, we are not playing this game anymore in a bad spot. We're not playing this game in a spot that does not do this rivalry game justice. You are not going to treat us like the stepchildren of the Big 12 Conference. These are two programs whose fan bases generate as much viewership or more, and as much viewership and revenue or more than anyone else in this conference. We are two of the teams positioned to take over as your big brands, as your torchbearers, as the tentpole programs of your college football branding for the next X amount of years, however long this iteration of college football lasts. You cannot have a conference game between the two of us tucked into the middle of the season quietly. This has to be a showcase. This has to be a big deal. This is a better game than Arizona State. This is a more nationally relevant game than Arizona State 9 out of 10 years. All respect to what Kenny Dillingham has done at that Arizona State program. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to be really good for a long time. I've told you 100 times, I thought they were a sleeping giant before, and maybe they're a giant that is now awake. But BYU and Utah, both programs right now, are ready to start swinging with the heavy hitters in college football. Not with the Ohio States and the Oregons, but with that next tier of we expect to be in the college football playoff every year type brands. And if you want to make Utah and Arizona State a great matchup and you want to feature that one too, awesome. They have a little history together from their time in the Pac-12. Let's see, where's that game happening? You start the year with UCLA, Cal Poly up next, on the road at Wyoming, just a terrible, terrible game to have to play. Start conference play with Texas Tech, on the road at West Virginia. Oh, look at that. Arizona State, then on the road at BYU, and then Colorado and Cincinnati. That 4-game stretch for Utah, that sucks, baby. You've got the Sun Devils at home. That's going to be a tough matchup. Thankfully, you're coming off of a bye there, so whatever bumps and bruises you accumulate through September, hopefully you can resolve at least a few of those before you take on what I promise you is going to be a tough out against Arizona State. And then the very next week, you go on the road to play your rival. Not rivalry weekend. Not when the rest of the college football world knows, like, hey, these are the games. These are the in-state games. This is where it's for all the pride, all the marbles. It's for the trophy, the in-state trophy. It's for the really good stuff. Nope. It's October 18th, ladies and gentlemen. And then you've got Colorado at home after that. So you're bracketing that trip to BYU with 2 games against some of the most athletic competition you're going to play, and 2 teams, well, 3 teams in a row when you include BYU in that road trip, 3 teams in a row that are well coached. Say what you want to say about your fandom or not of Deion Sanders. He's a better coach than Colorado had for the last 10 years of their existence in the Pac-12 conference. And you've got Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, 3 weeks in a row. We're going to be talking about it all summer. Today is the day when the Big 12 released the schedule, and I promise you, I wanted to be like, okay, let's talk about the positives here. I swear that was my intention, to come out and be like, you know what, this Utah team, the demise of the Utah football culture and program has been greatly exaggerated. Spring football, you're going to build some momentum. We'll talk a little bit later today on the Ute that's already appearing on the way too early preseason All-America lists that are being generated right now because it is a college football offseason. I wanted to be focused on all that. And I didn't know where they were going to put the BYU game. Maybe people did. Maybe insiders knew. Maybe I'm late to the party here. But this game matters more than a game played October 18th. This game's placement matters more, I should say. This is not a place that justifies the significance of your Holy War rivalry. So, grievance, I'm bothered by it. I'll probably bring it up again on Friday. After that 4-game stretch, Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, Cincinnati, a bye week for Utah, on the road at Baylor, at home against K-State, and then on the road at Kansas. This is a heavily backloaded schedule for the University of Utah. You better damn well make sure that you're 5-0 heading into that first bye week, because if you're going to stub your toe, if you're going to have some difficulties, Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, Cincinnati, that's not a fun 4-game stretch. I don't think Cincinnati's going to be too much of an issue there. Then you've got another bye week, Baylor, K-State, at Kansas. The back end of that schedule, 5 out of your last 7 games could be nightmares for you if you have any kind of the same injury situation you had this year. For those interested in what BYU's looking at, let's see how favorable their matchups are. Let's see how things start out for BYU. Portland State, Stanford, then a bye week. That's way too early to have a bye week. That's unfortunate. At East Carolina, at Colorado, West Virginia, on the road at Arizona, then Utah, and then Arizona State. So both Utah and BYU play their rival and Arizona State in back-to-back weeks. That's not ideal for the Utes or for the Cougs. Then a bye week at Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati, and UCF. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, BYU fans that for some reason listen here on the home of the Utes, 877-353-0700 on your Dish Pros text line. We made all the Disneyland and Harry Potter World jokes last season about BYU and UCF and that Disney trip and the post-Thanksgiving game, right? We did that last year. So you're telling me, Big 12 Conference, that you've decided UCF BYU is the kind of game that you want to put at the end of the year? That's your feature spot? We're going to do that multiple years in a row, Big 12 Conference?
It's being played on the same days that Utah played UCF last year, which is kind of insane. And by the way, correction, it's Iowa State after Utah for BYU, not Arizona State. I think you read that wrong.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, Iowa State. Iowa State. The font here on my laptop is incredibly tiny. So it says at Iowa State, and it looked like Arizona State. So Utah, Iowa State. Correct. All right, so BYU does not have Utah and Arizona State back-to-back. It's just Utah. So I have no idea how far in advance this schedule was put together. It does not feel like you are in good graces right now. Last year's schedule, Utah's first schedule in the Big 12 Conference, was, I think, a pretty favorable schedule. Now, unfortunately for Utah, the injuries piled up in such a way that it didn't end up leading to favorable results. But I thought that the conference had done Utah some nice favors in that opening schedule, their first year in the Big 12 Conference. This is not true. Now you're paying the piper. Now it's all coming home to roost. Now that preferential treatment, if you got any in the first season, is gone. And you've got a pretty easy first few weeks. Easy is a relative term, but a more favorable first few weeks. And then really, really rough stretch in October. Through October to the first day of November. And that final 3 games, no picnic either, at Baylor, Kansas State. And I gotta look really closely now, Zach, and make sure that I have it right. Yeah. At Kansas.
At Kansas.
So there's your schedule, Utah fans. How you feeling? 877-353-0700. At Relo C Sports, if you want to reach out to me on Twitter. Some other local connections to the release of the Big 12 schedule here. Arizona's got a Week 2 game against Weber State. Arizona's got Hawaii, Weber State, K-State, all at home to start off their season. The defending champion Arizona State Sun Devils, Northern Arizona at home, on the road at Mississippi State, and then Texas State at home. So you've got – it's actually a really interesting non-conference for Arizona State. Northern Arizona, you're going to be fine. Mississippi State, that's a very, very winnable SEC game for Arizona State. And then Texas State is going to be one of the tougher group of 5 teams in the country again. So easy power 2 matchup and then tough group of 5 matchup for the Sun Devils. From there, they go to Baylor at home against TCU. They've got a bye week before the game against Utah. So both the Sun Devils and the Utes will be coming off a bye when they face one another. Home game for Utah, I guess something we should be happy about there. Again, if you're with me and you believe that Arizona State is going to continue to be a tough out, they were a relatively young roster last year. Obviously, their head coach made some strides in recruiting and in the transfer portal because of the results that he was able to find with a roster that on paper hadn't impressed anybody. This time of the year last year, not one person was talking about Arizona State being a problem, and now you have to address them as a problem on your schedule. So good for Utah that game is right at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Texas Tech, Houston, at Iowa State, bye week, and then West Virginia, Colorado, and that Territorial Cup. That's a good enough rivalry game. Territorial Cups, that's one that belongs either Friday or Saturday. On the schedule, the designation is made that the Utah-Kansas game and the Arizona State game, not yet decided whether it's going to be a Friday or Saturday game, but it will be the final weekend of the college football season. And again, if you want to tell me, hey, we're going to position the Territorial Cup on a Friday preceding the big rivalry weekend because we don't want to lose television ratings or we don't want to lose viewership or we don't want to lose interest to some of the other great college football rivalry games, the regional rivalries that are going to be played, which, by the way, there are fewer and fewer of because a lot of teams don't exist in the same conference as their regional rival anymore. That aforementioned Apple Cup, the Civil War game in Oregon, casualties of realignment, as we know. So if you want to say, hey, we'll put these guys on Friday instead of on Saturday, I will applaud that decision. Good. Give them a little bit more of a spotlight. You know what else? What other game you could have done that with?
Utah, BYU.
Utah, BYU. The Holy War. It feels like this schedule is a punishment. It feels like this schedule is a bit of an admonition. Like, hey, Utah, you got a little too big for your britches. And what happened last year on the field didn't humble you enough. So we just want to remind you guys that you're not special. And your rivalry game, despite BYU being on the rise and you being fully ready to rebound, your rivalry game to us is not that special. Yeah. Nationally is not that special.
Yeah,
it's an insult.
It is, and I'm just as upset as you are as well. Like
it's a slap in the face, Zach.
Yeah, it is.
It's ridiculous. And again, you don't have Bedlam anymore. You don't have Oklahoma State. You have Farmageddon, which nobody outside of the Midwest knows about. You have the Territorial Cup, which was a fun rivalry game to talk about when 12. And guess what? Nobody outside of that regional footprint cares a lick about the Territorial Cup, even with the upstart fun that Arizona State provided. I'm not trying to build a case that SEC fans love the Holy War or Big Ten fans love the Holy War and are going to tune in for something like that just because it's being played. But we know about BYU's national audience with its church affiliation, and we know what Kyle Whittingham and company have built reputation-wise with 20 years, going on 20-plus years of head coaching experience in this rival and much longer actually participating in this rivalry game. Finally, the last decade, Utah has gotten its due. And finally, you have a situation where BYU, its longtime in-state rival, could benefit from that reputation and from that sort of cachet that's been built up. And instead of the conference putting both of these teams, both of these programs, both of these universities in the best situation to cash in, October 18th. No one's looking for a rivalry weekend October 18th. Not one. I hope it works out. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that, Zach, we can pull the receipts and we'll get to October 15th and you'll be like, hey, remember when you were mad that this game wasn't in a prominent enough spot and now Big Noon Kickoff is coming here, or now Game Day's coming here, and then I'll eat crow. But this feels to me like a slap in the face for the greatest rivalry game west of the Mississippi.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, for sure.
Bummer. All right, we got a lot to talk about today. Utah Jazz came up just short, maybe deliberately, on a couple of Lowry Markkanen free throws. But the NBA, the trade deadline approaching, the Utah Jazz, how involved are they going to be? And Craig Bolerjack will give us his reaction to the blockbuster trade that did involve the Utah Jazz, as Luka is headed to L.A. He's there now. AD headed to Dallas. The Sean O'Connell Show on a Tuesday. Happy Big 12 football schedule release dates. We celebrate. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
his first score. Double team in the corner. Out front, Collier. Beautiful pass. Flick of the wrist. And knocks down a Pura three-pointer.
Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 700. Kyle Filipowski, three-pointer against the Indiana Pacers, courtesy of Smith Entertainment Group Media. Craig Bolerjack on the call. Bowler's going to join us right here on the show in just a minute or two. Dealing with little technical difficulties. Reminder to all of you out there, the ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM Cash Kickoff is here. Now's your time for a shot to win $1,000 to pay the bills. Text Prosperity to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. Prosperity to 508-777-1000 for your chance at $1,000 cash money to pay the bills. Tell them OC sent you. As we wait for Craig Bolerjack, some reactions coming in on our text line about my rant over the Holy War not being put in the proper spot. This one interesting, 1624. Schedule doesn't matter if we suck again. Prove that you deserve to be placed on that day because last year we didn't. Hold on. That game, BYU-Utah, played last year. Again, they put it in a more favorable television spot than the one you're getting this year because it was a standalone, nationally televised night game. That game lived up to the hype and then some. That game went above and beyond what Utah showed it was capable of in most games. Better effort, better atmosphere, better everything, up until the moment where you couldn't close it out and the referee call came in and then Cam Calhoun wasn't able to make the game-sealing pick a couple of plays later. Like, that game, though, the drama, the theater of BYU-Utah played in that spot. If I'm a television executive, if I'm a conference decision maker, I see that game and I say, wow, this is a year when Utah is not even supposed to be good, and look at what that game delivered us. That was the best game of the year in the Big 12 Conference regular season, or one of the top 3 games of the year in the Big 12 Conference regular season. It actually ended up being, I think ESPN put a list out of the top 100 games in college football, and that game ended up number 11 of the year in all of college football. And this is at every level. There's a ton of these, like number 68, for example, Benedictine versus Morningside. We're talking NAIA games are making it onto this list. And BYU-Utah was deemed to be the 11th best game on the entire national college football slate. It was one of the top games in the conference, undoubtedly. Actually, BYU participated in a lot of these top games. BYU makes their appearance on the ESPN list of top 100 games in college football at number 11 with the 22-21 win over Utah. At number 10, 38-35 against Oklahoma State. And also at number 9, Arizona State over BYU 28-23. So someone working in the Big 12 conference offices, there's really no reason for you to look at that Holy War game and say anything other than, I need this to be one of our feature games every single year. I need this to be a game that we emphasize and talk about and run up to and highlight and build some atmosphere around. And instead, they're like, you guys could play October 18th. Have fun with that. At Real OC Sports, if you want to vote on the poll, I just put out how do we feel about the Holy War being played October 18th? To me, slap in the face, hate it. Do you not care? Anytime, anywhere, whatever. There are still people out there in both fan bases who don't want this game to be played at all. Well, now that your conference opponent's in the same state, you're gonna play it. All right, switching gears here to talk a little hoop. Craig Bolerjack, as promised, joins us here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bowler, what's up? How are you?
OC, I'm well. How you doing? Can I vote on your poll?
Yeah, please do. The Holy War being played October 18th. How do you feel about it?
No. This has got to be played where it has some impact late season, again, around the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. I mean, that's kind of where I've always thought it should be and was for a while. I mean, that game has to be played. I don't know why some people don't want it to be, but I believe the majority, from what I remember in the day, that's the game people circle on a calendar, right? And especially in the same conference, you're going to have really big implications on postseason play. So why not build up to it? You know,
That's
some
how I
years it
feel.
may be a dud. Some years it may be a dud. Other years it may have such great implications and make for one hell of a game.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And even in the years when we think it might be a dud, like, I mean, 8 out of 10 times this ends up being a great game, being a one-score game, being a final possession type game. Last year was supposed to be kind of a dud. Highly ranked BYU, Utah with all those struggles and injuries, and it ended up coming down to an amazing epic drive, game-winning kick for BYU, heartbreaker of a flag for Utah. I mean, it goes down in the history books as a great game, even though it wasn't for conference championship implications, at least not on the Utah side at that point. But anyway.
Yeah. OC, it's all about bragging rights, too, in the state of Utah. You know, it's red and blue, right? It's that other team down south or the team up north on the hill. I mean, that's what's fun about it. You know, rivalry, those are hard. I think rivalry games now even more so with the way that the college football landscape, that you can't manufacture rivalry. It has to happen over time, years, and games that have impact. And those last-second field goals or a Hail Mary or an Eddie Johnson touchdown at Rice Eccles late in the game. You know, there's just multiple storylines that follow all those great BYU-Utah games, and you just hope they continue.
And they will. Just they will be played in the middle of the season because you've upset somebody at the Big 12 office potentially. But let's move on. Let's talk some hoop. Look, yeah. I mean, the Utah Jazz are involved in one of the biggest blockbuster trades in NBA history, certainly the biggest one in recent memory, as Luka and AD are swapping places. And you had the introductory press conference of Luka Doncic in L.A. this morning. I imagine, were just like everyone else when you saw this thing coming down, disbelief. But then what was the reaction when you knew it was real?
Well, when I first heard it, I thought, no way. Who's being a funny guy on Twitter but then I realized this thing's real. This thing's happening. This is epic. This just does not happen. And then when I finally realized that this is going through, then I thought, wow. I try to settle back and think, why would Dallas, 7 months removed out of the NBA Finals, move Luka Doncic? What else is behind this story? And I think there has to be something, whether his dissatisfaction or the money that he's going to want down the road. Dallas front office and ownership just doesn't want to have to dish out the $300 million or whatever that may be. And then the Lakers' interest is the fact that they've got a 40-year-old great superstar Hall of Famer to be that wants one more chance at an NBA title. And then they think, I really believe, too, part of it is they're looking for the next face of the franchise. And they must have decided to say, let's stamp Luka Doncic as the next Laker for the next 10 years to continue to build interest and keep the ticket sales flowing, right? I think there's a lot of reasons. You're going to have to dive deep into this one, but sooner or later, some of that reasoning may come out. Maybe AD couldn't, really get along with LeBron. I mean, all these things come into play. Maybe AD wanted his own team, quote. Maybe it's not Kyrie's team, but they're going to share. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out because egos come into play, as you know. How do you get along? What kind of style do you play? Luka plays a different style than LeBron and AD. And so who adjusts? That to me is the most fascinating thing because Doncic just plays at his own speed, slow, methodical. And then LeBron, still at his age, you got to be honest, still is able to get out and push the ball and likes to go downhill. So it's intriguing, but there's got to be a lot of issues, a lot of reasonings behind it all.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see kind of the postmortem and when it all comes out, what we learn about relationships in Dallas, relationships in L.A., whatever. One thing that I think I didn't do a good job of yesterday was talking about the AD side of this because I was so focused on how do you get rid of a 25-year-old superstar if you're Dallas. Anthony Davis is still a great player. There are, he's a top 15 at least, I think, in the NBA. And you just alluded to the fact maybe he wanted his own team, his own run at things. Like, if there's a case to be made that Dallas improved their chances to win a finals this year because you do have Kyrie, you do have Klay Thompson, now you add AD to that mix. Did the Mavericks get significantly better in the short term, never mind what they traded away in the long term?
That's a great one, OC, because I think that they may have been frustrated and fatigued with Luka's injuries that continue to pile up. And from what, again, insiders tell you, he's not in basketball shape. You're right. I'm talking about Luka Doncic. So there may be some time that Luka needs to get back into basketball shape. That they've had to worry about that in New Orleans with Zion as well. Injuries put a guy like that on the bench, and if you don't stay, on the bike, and if you can't take reps on the floor, a little 3-on-3 just to stay in shape, then it's a difficult thing. So, I think with Klay and Kyrie, I mean, if you say the names out loud, I go, wow, that's a big three. But the only probably the bottom line to it is the negative is the age factor. And how much do they have juice to get through a tough playoff series to go to the finals again? But you're right about Anthony Davis. I think sometimes he's been overlooked a lot through his career, especially in Los Angeles because of all the hype on LeBron. But he's a talented player, inside-out rebounder, still can run. I think he's got a great skill set that will probably complement Kyrie and Klay. So, I think for the short term, the window you just alluded to, I thought Dallas had a 6 to 7 year window with Luka, and they would continue to put pieces around him. That window, I think, just closed about 2 years where they're competitive. And the Jazz, strangely, are looking to do the 7 to 8 year window themselves because windows in the NBA do close quickly with aging superstars who get together to put the big three together. And, LeBron's window is obviously closing quickly because of his age. His numbers are still ridiculous at his age. His performance level is still way high level. But they still understand they've got to plan for the future. And this is the first time I've ever thought they've had to put another piece in place anywhere LeBron has played to think ahead of LeBron. They're thinking, well, what's after LeBron now? And that's the first time I think I've ever thought about that in his tenure in the league, man. 20 years is a long run for I mean, that's epic. But to think about a team that's saying, well, what about LeBron? What are we going to do after? And I think that's where the Lakers are too with this deal.
Yeah, I think they got their answer definitively. Craig Bolerjack, my guest, voice of the Utah Jazz, NBA insider always. Okay, so the Jazz were a footnote in this blockbuster trade. Jalen Hood-Schifino, some cash exchanges hands, a couple of draft picks. That's great. But we know that the Jazz, the front office in the past has said, we're big game hunting. We know that they've got some draft capital. They've got some assets. We know that they've got their eyes set on a lottery pick with the performances that are happening this year. But does this trade show us anything that the Jazz can work on? Like, nobody thought 3 days ago that Luka Doncic was available on the trade market. People in the NBA didn't. I bet that Zanuck and Ainge and ownership for the Utah Jazz had no idea that something like this could be pulled off. Now it's a little bit different when you're the Utah Jazz than when you're the LA Lakers. But is there a bigger message here when it comes to that big game hunting, when it comes to NBA trades, seeing Luka move when none of us thought he could move? Is it something the Jazz could capitalize on in some way?
Yeah, I think you just said said it, because I've always believed there's about maybe a handful, maybe 6 or 7, if we want to jump that high, that are, quote, the untouchables, right, OC? I mean, where you think, no way. They're going to either force a trade like a Jimmy Butler, right, or Zion, who seems to be constantly unhappy, and that forces the hand of an ownership group to move a superstar. But rarely do you just sit back and go, what? Hold on, what just happened here? You just handed out 2 high-level top 10 or so players, and you just made a quick switch with no one knowing about it. I mean, that's, to me, is the most intriguing part, that they did it silently, kind of in the dark of night, and they just got the deal done. But what it tells me is that I guess in reality, no one's untouchable, right? Even though you think they are not, and their contracts may indicate that, but there's always a way around it. But a player has to okay the deal, and this one was done as quietly as I've ever could ever imagine. But I do think it still opens the doors for the Jazz and every other team in the NBA, mind you, see that, you know what, deals are deals. And if it improves, helps your finances for one, opens up some draft capital, another, and then improves your team around a young core, then a lot of GMs and ownership groups are going to say, let's roll. And, the Jazz may be in that position. Are they done? The clock's ticking. The deals for Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills surprised me because they're good guys. They're hardworking players. They have that veteran savvy that Will wanted to help with the locker room and show the young guys and how you're supposed to approach being an NBA professional. So that one surprised me. They moved just those two, but were they opening up spots someplace else? Well, the clock's ticking on Feb 6 on the trade deadline, and I'm not sure which way the Jazz are going, but I'm sure the phones are busy all around the league. And if it's the right deal, Danny most likely, pulls the string. But at the same time, you can't give away assets that don't help you in return. So it's an interesting time. A crazy time, actually, is the best word to put it. Crazy.
So last thing before I let you go, you have one more game to call before that trade deadline. And we've talked with, players, with coaches about the atmosphere of a locker room and of an organization when the trade deadline is looming, and especially when it's looming for a team like the Utah Jazz, who have been pretty public about their willingness to engage in trade conversations. They seem like they're players in the trade market right now. And you got one more game to call potentially with the roster as we see it today. You are the voice. You are the storyteller. Does it change, I don't know, how you call that game or how you say something about Jordan Clarkson, knowing this might be the last time we see him in a Jazz uniform?
I spoke with a couple of guys that I talk to a lot, and I just say, hey, look, personally, if I don't see you, I wish you well, because I'm closer to some guys and than others just because of situations, or sometimes when you're 19 years old, you just stay in your own shell and you don't really want to impact a young guy like that just in just normal conversation. But most of these guys are great guys, OC, honestly. It's a great locker room. I mean, I don't try to overplay that, but I've been around a lot of locker rooms, as you have, and this one just is solid, and Will Hardy is the centerpiece of that. I don't think Will was shaken, I'm going to guess, losing Patty and Drew, who he knew at San Antonio and brought here for that reason that we spoke of, leadership. It's going to be strange. I guarantee you that locker room will be tight. They're going to be probably glancing at the phones more than not. And if someone all of a sudden comes up with an illness or a late, tightness of a hamstring, that kind of gives you the reason of going, I wonder what's going on. I'll tell you a quick story if you got time. I remember when Jerry Sloan was coaching and I first started with the Jazz, we were on the plane actually heading out to the runway, and just like this situation, leaving for Phoenix on Friday, Thursday we'll leave for Phoenix and playing Friday against the Suns. We were on our way to a West Coast game, and we stopped the plane before the draft deadline, the trade deadline, that is, and they pulled the stairs up to the plane, and Ronnie Brewer, who was with the Jazz, was traded at that moment and got off the plane. And you talk about a silent team at that time, and Jerry Sloan didn't carry a cell phone at the time, and Kevin O'Connor had to make pull the trigger on the trade, and Ronnie came back, thanked Coach Sloan for all that he had done, and then grabbed his bag, and then left the plane, and then we flew.
Oh my
that happens
gosh.
around the league. Yeah, it's crazy. And I got to be honest, that was my first time that I realized the business of this great game of basketball, that it's a game, but it's a business. And I just thought to myself, wow, the emotions of that moment for everybody included, everyone saw it, everybody knew it, and it's been talked about, years ago in the papers and all. But yeah, Ronnie was a great guy, and all of a sudden he's not your teammate any longer, or I'm not going to, talk to him as a ball player on a broadcast. But those things happen all the time. And sometimes the player doesn't hear it from, they don't hear it they hear it on the radio because they're out doing life. They got kids, family, and all of a sudden, I've been traded? Really? I just heard it on the radio. But yeah, it's a crazy time. And I look, emotions, the human element still plays a factor, even though these guys are great athletes and they try to just be as focused and mentally tough as they come. But this is a tough next, 36 hours or so where they just have to kind of wait and see. And then afterwards, there's a huge breath. I think it's just, a relief that comes over that they can go ahead and play and do what they're paid to do. And then they move on to summer, and then the whole thing kind of rinse and repeat, right, in case some deals are made in the off season as well. So it's a tough time. OC, it's a tough time. And I know fans will say, well, they get paid a lot. They do, but still you can't take the human element out of it. They still are close to guys. They're close to the personnel that they're surrounded by every day. And believe it or not, they're tied into the fan base too. And it stings. I've seen it. And it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out, not only for the Jazz, but for the rest of the teams in the NBA.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate that perspective on it, Bowler, and appreciate your time today. Have a great call. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the time, pal. Talk soon.
Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, and I'm glad he told that story. That's why I wanted to ask someone who's close to the team, if we're not going to get a player on today or tomorrow or whatever, like that's knowing some people who played in the NBA and knowing some guys who've played professional sports or been in pro leagues and know this feeling. It's a really strange time, and tension is the right way to put it, where guys are showing up to shoot-arounds and practices and sometimes trips to go play and not knowing if they're going to be on that team tomorrow. That's a wild thing with the trade deadline approaching. Big thanks to Craig Bolerjack. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with a really quick hot lunch. There's a Utah Ute football player, as we got the schedule released today, who's already seeing his name appear on preseason All-American lists. Probably not going to surprise you, but where he's at on those lists might. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Lunch very, very quick for you. And then we're going to get to some red and blue. Jerem Jordan's going to swing by. We'll talk about the schedule release in the Big 12 football world, maybe a little college hoop as well. Reminder to all of you running Utes fans out there, if you haven't been to a home game yet, we can hook you up with some tickets. Text the word Utes to 33986 for a chance to win a pair of tickets. The next home game is tomorrow. Tickets are available at utahtickets.com, or you can text Utes to 33986. You'll be able to hear that game right here on ESPN 792.1 FM. All right, Hot Lunch. No surprise whose name is appearing on preseason All-America lists, but those way too early predictions for who the best players at each position in college football for this 2025 season, they're already coming out. Chris Lowe of ESPN put out his way too early All-American team, and Spencer Fano, one of the first-team All-American tackles that he has predicted. Highest graded run blocker at the position, according to Pro Football Focus, in the 2024 season. And he gave up a sack, I think, in week 1 and did not give up a sack for the rest of the season. It mentions in the article, in the little write-up, what a coup it was for Utah to retain Spencer Fano. That is absolutely true. The same is true of his running mate on the opposite tackle spot in Caleb Lomu. Fano is going to be one of the best tackles in all of college football this year. He probably is going to have a chance to be a first-round draft pick if he stays healthy. I don't anticipate that you'll get a fourth year of college football out of Spencer Fano. First-team All-America, and the reason why this one is even more impactful, the guy that is slotted in right behind him, Caden Proctor of the University of Alabama, is like the second-team guy, according to Chris Lowe, behind Spencer Fano. That's the level of production that some of the pundits believe this guy is capable of, and there's no reason not to believe so. Watch his film. He's a plus athlete. He's a technician, and obviously the healthiest version of Spencer Fano is among the great offensive linemen in all of college football, at tackle or at any position right now. Utah's incredibly lucky to have him, knocking on wood, that they can build everything around him. And this offense, Devin Dampier had an offensive line last year at New Mexico where nobody was even close to Spencer Fano's ability. And he still only was sacked 4 times.
That's crazy.
Nobody was close to Caleb Lomu's ability. Nobody had the level of experience that Mokafisi or Kump or this is the offensive line in front of Devin Dampier. If you extrapolate it out, if he only got sacked 4 times at New Mexico, he should be sacked 0 times at the University of Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the competition coming at him, trying to get him to the ground is also better. But, man, something to be excited about. And a little recognition for one of your favorite Utes, Spencer Fano, appearing on the way too early All-America list as a first-team All-America offensive tackle. Significant amount of pressure, but that's a guy who can handle it and potentially live up to it. All right, we got to take a break. Hour 2 coming. Red and blue. We'll talk a little Utah and BYU and the schedule release. The Big 12 Conference, in my opinion, has given you confirmation that BYU and Utah, as football programs, are not their top priorities. We'll see if Jerem Jordan feels the same way. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
by Richie Saunders.
A Richie Saunders three-pointer when BYU played UCF, courtesy of our friends at ESPN. Drew Felios, Sean Harrington on that call. Time for some red and blue. We welcome in BYU insider, BYU Sports Nation host, Jerem Jordan, to talk all things Utah and BYU for red and blue. Jerem, how are you?
I'm great, dude. It was fun to see you Sunday evening at the Utah Hockey Club St. Louis Blues games. I was hoping you'd be double fisting a couple of brewskis. No, it was your two daughters who were hanging by a thread, trying to enjoy the night. But yeah, it was a good game. Unfortunately, the not Mammoth Outlaws didn't win again.
Yes, five in a row. Unfortunately, Utah Hockey Club has lost, and we were commiserating on that. Also, I had already cast my vote for the team's name, which tonight is the last night. And then later on, when I was taking another lap with the aforementioned daughters during the break between second and third period, I saw you in line. You were standing in line waiting to go cast your vote. So is it safe to assume that you survived that line and you were able to make your vote heard?
I did, and I'm the one that leaked the picture. No, just kidding. It was I voted for Mammoth. I wouldn't mind Outlaws either. I think we both could be cool. Yeti would have been the best one, I think. But I don't think you can go with Utah Hockey Club. I think it's cool for this year, but we got to have a mascot. You know, it's an American thing to have mascots. On my mission in Brazil, they were like, "Why does every team have to have like a cute little nickname or something?" And I was like, "I don't know, marketing. Like it makes more money. There's like a person that dresses. I don't know. It's just a thing we do, man."
Yeah, I mean, I guess down there it's like Boca, right? They just have words, locations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, all right. I'm Team Mammoth also. I actually, I will say, and I've put this out on Twitter, the Mammoth logo they had as the mock-up, not my favorite Mammoth logo that I've seen. Was it fine? Yes. Was it as good as some of the ones we've seen, like the AI create and amateurs create on Twitter? No. So hopefully it all comes together nicely, whatever it turns out to be. It's just great to have an NHL team. But that's not why we have you here. That's not why Jerem Jordan comes on for Red and Blue.
I thought we were breaking down Utah Hockey Club's power play. But anyway, we can do that another time.
Yeah, we'll do that another time. So as you are well aware, Big 12 football schedule release day today.
I heard that.
I got real mad when I opened that email and when I saw I'm not going to lie. I got super bothered at the fact that the Holy War is being played on October 18th. Like, This is the best rivalry game remaining in the Big 12 Conference. It deserves to be played on rivalry weekend, or failing that, give me, like, first game of the season. Give me the ESPN kickoff. Give me something big, a big-time placement for this game. And instead, you tucked it even further into the middle of the college football season than we saw it last year in the what was that, second week in November. Your reaction to the placement of the Holy War rivalry game?
You remember that Chris Farley skit where on SNL where it's like a hidden camera and they're like, "Sir, these aren't Colombian crystal coffees. They're whatever crystal coffee, whatever." And he gets so mad and he starts like beating everybody up in the blood. That's how I felt. Then they do this like interview with him where they're like, "Sir, how are you feeling now?" He's like in a cast. He's like angry. That's how I felt. I felt angry because yes, to all the points you made, I said the same thing on BYU Sports Nation today. Like, why? I don't understand why it isn't later. Like, is there a request from the teams? Is it a league thing for maximum TV exposure? Do they not want to go up against some of the other bigger rivalries and give it like a bigger stage or something? I don't know. Like, what more do we need? Last year's game was crazy. Like, even when it's not, this rivalry is awesome. That's why we're talking. Like, I don't get it, and I would love an answer from the league as to what the thought process is here.
Yeah, I don't get it. I also don't understand why, like, the Territorial Cup. They've deemed the Territorial Cup worthy of placement in rivalry week. Arizona State.
Yeah, that one's big time. Oh, they didn't shake hands in basketball. Wow, that's crazy.
That one gets to be there, but like Kansas State doesn't get to be there. You know, Iowa State, Kansas State doesn't get to be there. It's just it's an interesting deal. The selection of who gets prominent placement and who doesn't, and maybe I'm being irrational I probably am being irrational. That's just kind of like the general set of my life. There doesn't seem to be rhyme or reason to this when I believe Arizona State is going to be a great team. So by all means, put their rivalry game wherever you want to put it. But BYU and Utah, the contest itself delivered, even in a year that was a down year for Utah, right? So if you're the Big 12 and you were not aware of how awesome this game was or how awesome the atmosphere turns out to be in these situations, if you went into this thing blind, last year's game should have showed you.
Yes, absolutely. Both teams don't have to be good for the game to be good. In fact, some of the best games of both teams were bad, or one team was bad and one of them was really good. It's all good. No matter what the situation is, it's awesome. So yeah, it's super confusing. Farmageddon's a big game, but they're taking that to Dublin for the opening week 0 game. That's kind of fun. I see that one. Can you imagine, by the way, BYU Utah internationally in week 0? That would be kind of cool.
It'd be so great.
I'm hoping they do that at some point. It's like Mexico City, but hopefully.
What international location, Jerem, would be the best attended? What would be, if you're trying to get folks from the state of Utah to absolutely make the trip, fly there, attend the game, where would you need to put the Holy War week 1 in that Farmageddon spot? You're not going to Dublin, right? Let Notre Dame do that.
No, does it have to be Canada or Mexico?
No,
does it have to be
it could be.
Well, I mean, if you're going to get a bunch of fans there, Vancouver or Toronto.
You know what? Hawaii.
I don't think Guadalajara is going to do it for us.
Hawaii at one point was its own sovereign nation and probably still should be, but that's a topic for a different show.
It's Greenland.
If you put the game in, you could do anywhere in any beach town in Mexico, and you throw this game
in Cabo.
In Cabo,
the Cougs takes you right to the game.
Be perfect. The rest of BYU's schedule. So I went through and aired my grievances and my issues with the stretch that Utah's got in October. It felt like last year the conference was like, welcome to the Big 12, Utah. Here's a pretty favorable schedule for you. And then for whatever reason, maybe I'll just leave it at that. For whatever reason, it's like, now October, we hate you, Utah. Look at this. BYU, as you've gone through it with the fine-tooth comb, what's the most interesting stretch in the BYU schedule for you?
I've gone through it with the comb that I used on my well-groomed mustache within the honor code. Let's see. There's middle of the season's kind of interesting for BYU. So you start out with 2 home games, Portland State, Stanford, and then you have a bye, which is not a great spot for that bye. That's terrible. At East Carolina, I'm not in favor of playing road G5 or G6 games anymore. I just think, what's the point? It's a lose-lose.
Yeah, Utah's going to Wyoming, Jerem. That's their week 3 game.
BYU did that last year. I don't know what Wyoming did, but for some reason both were enticed to go there. Okay, at Colorado to open the conference slate. That's a fun one. Alamo Bowl rematch. Then, West Virginia, you're at home. Then it begins this stretch. Well, at East Carolina, it begins this stretch of 8 weeks. There's a bye week in there, but there's only 2 home games. It is a really road-heavy situation. At ECU, at Colorado, home West Virginia. At Arizona, Utah at home. Then it's at Iowa State. That's a tough 2-week stretch there, right? Bye week at Texas Tech. Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech. That's the hardest 3-game stretch, it would appear, right now. And then down the stretch, 2 of 3 at home, TCU, at Cincinnati, UCF. BYU's going to butter their bread in the middle of the year. And we look at last year and kind of anticipating what teams could be or who they are or whatever. It's hard to know because last year the top 5 weren't the top 5, right? And the bottom 5 crept up in there. So it's fun to be like, yeah, I think that's a win. It's like, dude, I don't know, dude. Is Arizona State going to be good without Scatterboo? They'll probably be good. What if they're terrible? Oklahoma State was supposed to be that team this year, and they were awful, and they brought back everybody, including the Doak Walker Award winner. So it's kind of fun, but also weird that we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The league's pretty volatile. All we need is that top team better compete in the playoff well, and it'd be nice to get 2 teams in there. And the key is preseason, if you have a couple of teams that are expected to be good, they need to be good. Then you can get an at-large in there. Otherwise, you're one big league, which is what happened this year.
The way too early top 25 rankings on ESPN, I'm sure you've seen, have BYU number 9 right now. Is that a place where you would put them?
No, too high. Like if BYU's in the teens to me somewhere, you could go 13 to 18, and I'd probably be fine with it. BYU brings back a ton of production from last year. Ultimately, BYU operates better when they're undervalued. They play that card well. So I'm interested to see how BYU handles success and what motivates them. Today I said, hey, your new thing today could be like, hey, look what the league did with our schedule in the middle of the year. We got to be road warriors. And BYU certainly has great following all over the country. So it's not like it's not like you're showing up at Wisconsin every week per se. You can have some fans that give you some great support there. So I'm interested to see what happens with BYU this year because they lose a couple of big pieces certainly, but they bring back a ton. Can they be the well-rounded team they were last year that yielded really good one-score record in those games, and then ultimately BYU feeling like, hey, we have one more step that we didn't get to this last year is get to the Big 12 title game.
Talking some red and blue with Jerem Jordan as part of our Big 12 at noon coverage, brought to you as always by Mountainland Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com or visit one of their physical locations for all of your remodel home improvement needs. Okay, so since we're talking about football, I'm going to stay with football. Utah had a couple representatives at the Senior Bowl. These college all-star games that's right. That's what I start to get into my pre-draft evaluation process, right? Like picking up on, see how these guys perform in practices. Tyler Batty got some love at his own appearances, right? There were guys out there, old pros walking around, and I can't remember who was asked, but it was like, hey, who's impressed you most this week among the D linemen, and whoever it was, and the name will come to me. Well-respected, longtime veteran player of the NFL was like, hey, watch out for this Tyler Batty kid. Now, we know all the things that are going to be used against Batty when it comes to combine time and things like that, but he's an old guy like us. So how is he going to be treated in this NFL pre-draft process, you think?
Hopefully they look at kind of leadership and then kind of what he actually does on film. Because if you just looked at stats and you just looked at, age and everything, well, sure, he's looking like an old man. But what he brings to your team is he makes you better. And this year, statistically, didn't quite have what he had last year, like 59 tackles for a DN, so that's a high number. 7 TFLs, like, okay, just the 1.5 sacks. He had more picks, 2, than sacks, but he added something to his game. And if you look at his entire body of work, he's a guy that certainly could help your D-line. Is he going to blow you away with his speed and whatnot? No. He's got some of the tangibles, not all of them that sometimes on paper you look at, and upside and whatnot. But if you want like a steady guy who's going to be a leader and you don't have to worry about him and he's going to produce in different ways, whether that be statistically or otherwise, Tyler Batty's your guy. And I think he's probably BYU's best NFL prospect this year, which speaks to how good BYU is as a team, right? They didn't have a day 1 or 2 guy, yet they won 11 games. That's pretty impressive.
What's ATN going to be in the NFL?
That's a good question because he went from like just poorly graded guy as a junior to as a senior first team all Big 12. And you'd like to think that as a left tackle in this league that, 1, you're going to be drafted, then 2, you're going to compete for time. Now, it's not the same kind of left tackle BYU's had the last couple of years where it was like, okay, Brady Christensen, Blake Freeman, Kingsley Suamataia, 3 starting left tackles in a row, boom, all drafted within the first 4 or 5 rounds of the NFL draft and in the league. Now, Kingsley's been sitting for the majority of kind of the last like 12 or 13 games here, but dude's in the league, dude's on a roster. That's the goal. Get the guys to the next level, and then it's kind of up to them at that point. But I think he'll be on a squad somewhere. He'll probably be picked 5, 6, 7 rounds, and if he's not, he's going to be a highly sought after undrafted free agent, and hopefully a guy that kind of break in where you need him. He's got all the physical attributes, 6'8", 330. A guy with great experience who's come from nothing, literally was at a community college in Kansas a couple of years ago, and now he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the league. So he's a great story. He's got a son, so BYU fans rooting heavily for Caleb Etienne.
When's Foose going to make the announcement that he's trying to prepare for an NFL combine at some point in his career? Like that'd
be amazing, right? Like he calls Caleb Loner. He's like, dude, what do I do? How do I How do I transition here? A la John Moala, mid '90s, they pulled him from the football team to the basketball team when BYU went like 1-25. That was fun. Yeah, dude, Foose could be interesting because he's got quick feet, quick twitch. Jonathan Tavernari, by the way, one time after his BYU career, sat in the airport and randomly he was with Ron Rivera when he was with the Panthers, and they actually got talking and they actually wanted JT to come fly in for a tryout, but he was like, "Nah, I'm good."
What? What do you mean? Nah, I'm good. What? Why?
He wanted to play pro. He wanted to play pro basketball, and I think he had some contracts in Europe already. But wild, right? Like 6'6", probably good hands. Like JT could have been an interesting tight end, man.
That's crazy. I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but also not, because this is a tried and true method in the NFL. They do this with guys who have plus physical characteristics, good feet, like you said, athleticism. The easiest thing for a guy with a large frame to do is change his weight. So if it was like, hey, man, do you think you could play offensive line? All right, let's pack some pounds on you. We want you to be a tight end. That's actually probably harder because you actually have to have some hand-eye coordination. But basketball players do. So, I mean, I don't know what his pro prospects in basketball are going to look like. I do know that somebody will at least take a flyer on him as a football prospect.
6'5" and a half. We're talking about Foose. 6'5" and a half. Yep, 6'5" and a half, like 235, strong as an ox, like good hands. Like that'd be really interesting. Which, by the way, how about the PR around Luka being like, oh, he's bloated up to 270? I'm like, dude, 6'8", 270. Put 30 more pounds on him. He's a left or right tackle in the NFL. Isn't that wild? How big these guys are in the NBA. Like the height, obviously, but like Travis Kelce stood next to Luka one time, and I was like, wait, Luka looks like a giant, which is crazy. We think of Travis Kelce as like one of the bigger dudes in the league. It's crazy, man. Just these guys at the next level are massive.
The weirdest thing is when you see like Steph Curry standing next to an NFL football player.
Yes.
And you're like,
tall.
Steph, when you see him on an NBA floor, you're like, oh, he's a little boy. And then you see him standing on like the Niners sideline or something next to George Kittle, and you're like, wait, what? That's not how that size comparison's supposed to look. But yeah,
I
NBA guys are freaks.
6'4" was a tall receiver. It's like, no, like 6'2" is a tall receiver, you know. But in the NBA, 6'2" is a short point guard. Like, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, very strange. All right, BYU hoops. What's the key to consistency and improvement here? We're getting closer and closer to tournament time, closer and closer to when the rubber meets the road. I think it was on your Twitter. I saw the bracketology right now has them. Was it last four in? Maybe.
Yep.
Okay, so you don't want to be a bubble team if you can avoid it. How do they get off that bubble?
Win tonight, that certainly helped. Arizona coming in, which is a massive game for BYU and an opportunity for the Cougars to pull off an upset. Although the homies in Vegas have BYU by 2.5. Arizona has not played well in true road games in the league against good teams. And so BYU in the Marriott Center, tough place to play. Big win against Baylor a week ago. I'm interested to see the matchup between two of the top 10 individual offensive rebounders in the country. Keba Keita is really good. And then Tobe Awaka, the center for Arizona. That's going to be a fun matchup. Caleb Love, obviously a star that comes in that could change a game. But BYU's won 4 in a row. They never won 3 in a row last year, and that was a good team. But now got a 4-game win streak coming off a quad 1 road win at UCF in a close game. They've checked a couple of these boxes where it was like, are they going to win close games? Are they going to beat good teams? Well, they have 2 games in a row now. Can they string it together against Arizona tonight? I expect BYU to compete really well and win. If they don't, I won't be surprised because Arizona's good. But I think we've got a heck of a game. Late one, 9 Mountain on ESPN. Can't wait, though.
That's Jerem Jordan, Team Mammoth. Next time we have him on, we'll talk about Sergachev's load reduction and, of course, the power play. You're the man.
Got to get Gunther and Cooley. Let's get them healthy.
Got to get him healthy. Got to break that streak, hopefully tonight. Yeah. Jerem, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks, Sean.
Jerem Jordan, BYU Sports Nation host and insider, made me feel a little bit better about my irrational reaction to the Holy Wars placement on the Big 12 football schedule. October 18th is not where you play that game. But I love this. I love the rivalry game more than like even the most dyed-in-the-wool hardcores do, I think. There's plenty of Utah fans who got sick of this game and the conversation around it when Utah was a Pac-12 team. Now that you're back in the same conference, if it's unavoidable, right, if you have to play one another, as in-state teams in the same conference, you have to play every single year, at least make it big. At least as a conference, treat it the way that it should be treated. This is mismanagement of the schedule. It just is. Hate it. Anyway, big thanks to Jerem Jordan, part of our Big 12 at noon coverage brought to you by Mountainland Supply. Up next, Sarah Todd at NBA Sarah on the old tweet machine. She wrote a really excellent piece for the Deseret News on what it means for the Mavericks, what it means for the Lakers, what it means for the Utah Jazz, what it means for the NBA that this mega trade went down. And the word that she uses, I think, is the most accurate word for what Dallas just did. We'll let her give it to you next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. ESPN 792 FM are welcoming Kevin Hart to the Delta Center Friday, April 18th for his Acting My Age tour. Spence Checketts is giving away a pair of tickets every day this week. Tune into the drive for your chance to win a pair of those tickets. Kevin Hart at the Delta Center Friday, April 18th. Woo, that's a good little prize. That's a nice little ticket. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We welcome in NBA Sarah Todd, Des News Jazz Insider. Sarah, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing not too bad. How are you?
Doing all right. Anything interesting going on in the NBA right now?
Nothing that I can even think of. I don't even know what we have to talk about, except for, Nico Harrison, the Dallas Mavericks general manager, has lost his mind and probably deserves to be shot into the sun.
Okay. So you use the word malpractice when you're when you describe Nico Harrison's decision to trade Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. I love that word. I throw it around probably more than I should, but it fits here. And I'm glad that, you who's so dialed in on everything going on in the NBA, that you characterize it this way, because sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind watching these things and being like, wait, everyone else sees this, right? And how did we get here? How did the Dallas Mavericks get to a spot where their general manager trades away a 25-year-old superstar and then sits down with the coach and is like, also, here's Jay Kidd. He and I are aligned, so I didn't have to tell him this was happening. He didn't know about it. Like, what's going on?
Those are great questions. Oh, see, I don't have the answers to that. It feels absolutely insane. And I'm, again, another word that I probably throw around a little too much. This feels like actual insanity, like institutionalized insanity. I don't understand how any of this happens. I mean, if I'm the owner of an NBA team and my general manager comes to me to sign off on a trade that's getting rid of a superstar, not even a superstar. Luka Doncic is a global generational talent when it comes to basketball. And he brings me a deal and he says, we're going to get AD and one pick. I then fire my general manager on the spot for not only bringing me something that's insane, but for even considering it. That I just don't even understand how we got to the point that trade was approved by ownership. I understand that they're under new ownership, that Mark Cuban is not does not have the final say-so anymore because he has only a minority stake. But I really, really don't understand how Nico Harrison thought that this was going to be okay. And not to disparage Anthony Davis, right? Anthony Davis is an incredible basketball player. He's spectacular. He is going to probably go down as one of the best players ever, but not top five, not top three. He's certainly not in the top 5 or top 3 this year, and he won't be for the next 10 years. Luka Doncic has the potential to be that. He was the scoring leader last season. 7.5 months ago, he's taking the Dallas Mavericks to the finals, and you've decided that he is worth a guy on the wrong side of 30 who is known as street clothes. That's his nickname because he doesn't play enough games because he's always injured.
Okay. One of the many things about this that fascinate me so much is how secretive the whole thing was until it got done. Now, you are an actual reporter. You're actually in the real, media side of things. I consider myself more of a columnist than anything, and that's probably too generous. But folks are well connected. They are sourced. They have favors that they can call in, and it seems like nobody caught wind of this before it was actually a done deal. And I wonder how that happened, first of all. But if other teams in the NBA had known that Luka was tradable, I feel like somebody, maybe the Utah Jazz, I don't know, would have come with a much better package of compensation and maybe gotten Luka to wherever else. Am I wrong for thinking that the secretive nature of this trade is part of the reason it was able to go all the way to fruition with the compensation that Dallas got back, which, of course, is less than the Jazz got for Rudy Gobert?
It's less than the Nets got for Mikal Bridges. It's less than the Hawks or the Spurs got for or the Pelicans got for, Spurs and Hawks got for DeJounte Murray. Like, it's less than the Kings just got for De'Aaron Fox. It is less, and the secrecy is the only way that this happens, because and I think that is the biggest wrongdoing here. This is the reason that this is NBA malpractice, because if you have a global superstar that you are actually willing to deal, then you have an obligation to get the best possible compensation for it. And so, number one, Nico Harrison should have signed Doncic to a supermax first and then traded him if he really wanted to get rid of him. That way, the team that was getting him would have been willing to go even more all in because there's security, because he'd be under contract for longer. And number two, just only approaching the Lakers and no one else is absolutely insane, because you want to win now, that's great, but why not just win next year? Why not go for that? You could have approached the Jazz. If the Jazz front office had known that Luka was available, they would have been like, hey, Nico, I know that Rob's telling you can have Anthony Davis, but how does Lowry Markkanen and 5 first-round picks sound this summer? Because we'll give you whatever you want. You might have been able to get Giannis. You might have been able to get Anthony Edwards. You could have gotten a lot of different players. You could have gotten more durable players. You could have gotten a whole haul of first-round picks. And instead, the Dallas Mavericks core now are 3 guys that are well on the wrong side of 30 in Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Klay Thompson. And when those guys are no longer playing, Luka Doncic is still going to be in Los Angeles as the king of the Lakers, ushering in the next era of exceptionalism for the Lakers. And all of those guys will be out of the league, and the Mavericks won't have a cupboard full of picks to fix what Nico did because of the secrecy. And all Rob Pelinka had to do was just keep his mouth shut. Nico's the one that approached him. And so the Lakers had this fall into their lap, and the only way to get it done was secrecy, which was just the biggest failure for the Mavericks.
Sarah Todd, my guest here, talking the Luka pick and the fallout, what it means for the league. What is the likelihood? How strong is the possibility that all of us who are criticizing this and criticizing Nico and saying what a moron he is have to eat a little bit of crow because it pays off when they win a finals either this year or next year?
I mean, the chance of that is what, 1 in 116, right? Only one team is going to win the championship. It is not likely that you do it. It is the probability is low because Jokic is still an NBA player, and they've beaten the Lakers before. So the likelihood, I think, is low. Now, let's say that the Mavericks somehow pull it off and do win a title with Anthony Davis. I'm not fully willing to say that this trade was worth it at that point, because Nico Harrison himself said that he did this trade with the next 3 or 4 years in mind and wasn't even thinking beyond what his tenure is probably going to be. And again, malpractice. If I heard my general manager say that he only cared about the next 3 or 4 years and wasn't thinking farther than that, I would fire him, because that's not how the job works. You have to be thinking about the extended future of the team that you're running. And even if the Mavericks win a title, in 4 years, they're going to have nothing. And Luka Doncic will still have at least another 6 years probably in the NBA. And one of your Western Conference foes is going to be able to lure whoever they want to the Lakers to be someone that you actually have to compete against, because you gave them one of the top 5 players in the league. So you're looking at least 10 years of the Lakers having one of the best players in the league. And I just don't think that it's worth giving up one of the best offensive players for. I think I'm willing to eat crow. I'm willing to take L's. I do it all the time. I have bad takes on a daily basis. This just feels incredibly unlikely, and as it stands right now, there's just no excuse for it.
Are LeBron James and Luka going to be good for one another in LA?
I mean, LeBron James is one of the most well-conditioned players to have ever played basketball. I can't imagine a better person to put Luka Doncic under their tutelage if you're worried about his doughy middle section. It's like, P.S., a doughy middle section, which also took the Mavericks to the finals literally 8 months ago.
Yes.
So, like,
yes, not all doughy midsections are created equal. I can say that as a possessor of one at the moment, and mine has never been close to an NBA Finals championship. So the fact that everyone's so obsessed with that is pretty funny to me.
Right, and we live in a world where Nikola Jokic famously has a doughy middle section, and he's the literal best basketball player in the world. So just the idea that you might have pissed off Luka enough to go learn how to stay in incredible shape from LeBron James, again, just a horrible idea.
It's so funny because I agree with everything you're saying, and no matter what question you pose, it kind of comes out to the answer being the same. This was a terrible idea for the Mavericks. And here's another reason why this is a terrible idea for the Mavericks. Oh, here's another reason why this is a terrible idea for the Mavericks. And I love it. It's just fantastic. For the Jazz, and for everyone else, for that matter, who is trying to be players in a trade market, does this reset the way we think about these untouchable talents, these guys that, of course, there's no way you can get Luka. Of course, you could not pry Anthony Edwards out of Minnesota. Of course, there's no way you're going to be able to get that guy because that's a franchise building block. That's somebody that you keep for the entirety of their career if you can. Does this change anything for the NBA at large, or because it is such significant malpractice, nobody else is going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that not all NBA front offices are this stupid, right? Like, that's what we just have to hope for. Because if this is a trade that actually does change the NBA landscape and top 3 and 5 players are just available to be, wheeled and dealed willy-nilly, then that's bad. And it is really dumb. Like, it's a slap in the face to the fans, right? Like, if you have someone that is going to regularly fill up the arena and is an absolutely global superstar, like, no, those guys should be untouchable. This should not be a deal that changes the NBA landscape or how superstars are believed to be available or unavailable. Sure, you always pick up the phone if you're a GM and you call and you ask what the asking price would be. But I really don't think that this should change things.
All right. Last and perhaps most important thing before I let you go. Have you cast your final vote for Utah Hockey Club, Outlaws, or Mammoth?
I personally, I think that Mammoth is the best one. But that comes with the caveat of saying that I fully do not believe that Ryan Smith and everyone in charge is going to go through the work of actually changing things. Utah Hockey Club is just fine. It works. People will love it. I mean, the giant puck's already out in front of the Delta Center with the name on it. Like, I just don't believe it's going to change.
I love your answer and hate your answer at the same time because I can't argue with it.
That's fair.
I also like Mammoth the best, but
yeah.
But yeah, the realism creeping in, Sarah, it's not good for me. All right, that's
No.
I want to be whimsical about this.
Yeah, and they have the power to just tell us all that Utah Hockey Club got the most votes. Like, what are we gonna do?
Well, we know they would lie. We know they would. We know they would be lying if that were the answer. But you're right.
Yep.
They can do what they want. Everybody, go read the article on Deseret.com. Sarah Todd at NBA Sarah on Twitter as well. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, OC.
Sarah Todd, great article, great piece, great conversation with her. And look, maybe it's confirmation bias, but when somebody whose entire job, everything that Sarah does, incredibly professional, following this NBA, knowing all the ins and outs of precedent and what other people have in mind, trade-wise, and this trade executed so suddenly and with no fanfare up until the moment that it actually broke as being a done deal, it just doesn't fit the mold of everything else that happens in the NBA, which leads me and some other people to believe that there might be a little conspiracy element to this, all right? And it's not just me. It's not just like NBA-adjacent folks. Wait until we play for you the sound that Zach cut earlier. Dwayne Wade has some thoughts on how this trade came about. Yes, that Dwayne Wade. Part owner of the Utah Jazz. That Dwayne Wade. Wait till you hear what he says about how this thing came together. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Oh, my gosh. If it sounds like I'm speaking to you with a mouthful of slobber, it's because I am. Our Spanish language sister station here at the Broadway Studios is having some kind of a situation with what look like homemade tamales, and just brought a plate of those into the studio here. Wow. Smell good. Can't wait. Boys.
Gonna devour these later.
Oh, my gosh. I'll try to stay focused for the next few minutes here. We're going to speak some Super Bowl preview with Jeff Schwartz. That's coming up in our 1 o'clock hour. He'll be on his way to the airport, so it might not be exactly at 1:05, whatever. We'll get to Jeff. I was somewhat sheepishly, cheekily, tongue-in-cheekily talking about the conspiracy theory angle on how this trade from Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis came together. We just spoke about it with Sarah Todd. Like, it doesn't really make rational sense on so many levels that if you're the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks and you're willing to part ways with your young superstar Luka for whatever reason, because you don't like that he's a little bit chubby, because you don't like that he's injured, whatever reason, there's not really a good reason for you to not make it public, at least in NBA circles, that like, hey, he's available. Where's the highest bidder?
Yeah, and another point that Sarah brought up as well that I liked hearing is like, why not the Jazz? They have so much compensation.
That's the thing, right? You could have traded with somebody who's not the Los Angeles Lakers, and gotten more back, which I think fuels my conspiracy ideas, because if the Utah Jazz were willing to, and they would have been, and able to, and they would have been, put together an appealing trade package, then, yeah, maybe they would have said, sign him to the Supermax first, and then give him to us so that we know that he's going to stay here in Salt Lake City. That wouldn't have served the NBA's interest necessarily. The NBA is not upset that this trade went down and that international superstar Luka Doncic is in LA for the foreseeable future. It's not just me with the tinfoil hat on. Listen to what Dwayne Wade had to say about this on the Trading Spaces podcast, sitting down with several other NBA players, talents, dignitaries, etc. Dwayne Wade said this about the trade coming together.
This was billionaire business.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This was at the top. This was the last 12 to 15 years, the players have decided, right, what we want to do. This was the owners, the governors, the billionaires deciding what they want to do. And so I looked at the business of the game. I said, okay, so the NBA, who everyone talks about, the viewership in America is down. We talked about on this show, the NBA is an international game. The NFL, this is where they at. We are here, but we international. And so our viewership, our money, our stars in the game today are all international players for the most part. So now you look at it and you say, okay, one of the biggest international stars now at 25 years old, gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. The biggest market in the world for sports is the Lakers. And so I look at this and I say, okay, obviously Dallas, like we talked about, this is a win-now situation for Dallas, right? They came off of someone who we all was like, man, it's Luka Magic, he's a star. But how they feel they want to win a championship, they didn't feel that at this time in his career that he can do that with a win-now team. Right? They want a win-now mentality. And so I looked at it, I said, this is amazing from the standpoint of the business of the game. Luka he was number 6 in jersey sales, right? Coming in Dallas. Luka now shoots number 1 in jersey sales with the Lakers. For sure. Now the international market. Think about it. We just signed a new TV deal. A couple, 25 billion. Let's just throw it out there. All right, $25 billion TV deal. So now internationally, you got the top international player in LA. So the viewership, the ticket sales, everybody, Europe, Spain, they all coming into LA. We know how this. So I'm looking at the business and I'm like, hold up. This was an amazing business decision by billionaires. For sure. To say, this is what I want for now, and this is what we need as a league. You get 10 years of Luka being the face of the Lakers, but you also get to put him with LeBron James, who, let's say he can play as long as he wants, but you get to put him with the guy who's been the face of the league, who can show him how to be the face of the league, and also, too, who can show him how to take care of himself the way he needs to take care of himself. That is the best example you can have.
Yeah.
You put him with the Lakers. You put him with LeBron. Go learn, because we need you to be the face of this league, because this is a business, and this is about bread, too.
Co-sign everything that Dwayne Wade just said. And obviously, he knows this business better than any of us will. He's a part owner of an NBA franchise right now, and probably a little bit salty that his NBA franchise wasn't given an opportunity to put a package together for the Dallas Mavericks and say, hey, maybe we could get us a little bit of Luka. And Luka is the kind of star you need in Salt Lake City, right? You need a young star, probably a European star, probably somebody who's going to be, look, he's from Slovenia. Salt Lake City's a lot more like Slovenia than Los Angeles is. But it sounds like all reports are that this was a quiet conversation between Pelinka and Nico Harrison, and that the Lakers and the Dallas Mavericks were the only ones involved. And even though that the Utah Jazz were a third party in this trade, allegedly, reports coming out now that Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge didn't know the players involved in the trade, at least not every player involved in the trade, until it was done. Like, there was nothing they could do at that point. There was no, hey, wait, don't trade him to the Lakers. And you know what? Even if they did find out, because Dwayne Wade is willing to say it, it gives me more comfort in saying this. The NBA wanted this to happen for all the points that Dwayne Wade just made. Every one of those points. They wanted this thing to happen as it happened. And now they've got their exit plan for LeBron James, the new face of the league, the new face of the franchise for the Los Angeles Lakers, and nobody else was allowed to go in there and potentially mess that up by offering, fair trade value for Luka Doncic?
5 first-round picks.
I mean, whatever it is, all respect to the players involved. And Anthony Davis is catching strays on this whole thing because he's still a great player. But the questions remain. How did this fly under the radar? How did this fly under the radar until the point of fruition when other trades, less significant trades, are not able to do so? Because Adam Silver and the NBA wanted it to happen. That's why.
Yeah. It makes me question, too, is like, what will the Jazz do now? Like, who are they going to go after with all these picks before the deadline on Thursday, you know?
Well,
crazy.
Now it's like, all right, well, the big splash already happened, so you're not going to splash like that. We'll see what the Jazz do. Couple of more days. We'll have Gordy Chiesa in studio with us on trade deadline day talking about all this stuff. It's a lot to get to with this NBA. All right. Jeff Schwartz is going to join us at some point in our next segment, the top of hour number 1. I think he's going to be calling in. We'll talk some Super Bowl preview and get his thoughts. He's a Laker fan since childhood. He grew up in L.A. Get his thoughts on this Luka mess. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Patrick Mahomes, 17-yard touchdown pass to Travis Kelce from Super Bowl 57. That's courtesy of Fox Sports. Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olson on the call. We welcome in Jeff Schwartz, my longtime co-host on Pac-12 Radio, NFL veteran, football insider, betting analyst, all those things, to preview this upcoming Super Bowl. Former Kansas City Chief as well. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
I am good, buddy. I am going to New Orleans. I'm in the car right now, going to the airport, and the thought of, like, I have 3 things to do tomorrow night, it's giving me hives. Like, bouncing around, different things, like, talk to people. Buddy, not a good mental space right now.
Yeah. Poor Jeff Schwartz has to go to Super Bowl parties. Oh, my goodness. Your life is miserable.
It can be at times, but, no, I'm excited to talk to you. It should be a fun week in New Orleans. I have the over-under bowls of gumbo at 8.5.
Okay.
I'm there tonight through Monday.
I'm taking the over.
That gives me a couple bowls a day. I really should set it in, like, bowls per, like, one sitting. It counts as one, not like if I get an extra bowl. I don't know if I ever told you this story. So this doesn't happen much in the NFL now, but the night before a game, you fly to a city, and you get there you get to about 4 o'clock, and then you're off till meetings typically about 7:30. And the way I grew up in the NFL was we all went to dinner together as an offensive line. We'd go to dinner and we'd come back at 7 o'clock and we'd go to meetings and have some more fellowship after dinner. And that sort of started to go away when I got older. But a couple of us, we played in New Orleans in 2015. A couple of us went out to go eat, and I ordered a bunch of stuff, but I ordered a cup of gumbo. And the server, the waitress, said to me, "Hey, you sure you just want a cup like that? It's like, you sure?" Basically, like, you're fat, you want more than a cup. And I said, "No, I want a cup. I got a game tomorrow." And she delivered the cup to me. I had one bite, and I said, "Yeah, I'll take a bowl." And she brought me a bowl of gumbo. So the moral of the story is, always take the bowl of gumbo,
yes,
not the cup.
Oh, I'm jealous. I love me some gumbo, and I'm glad you get to have, I'm going to say, 11 bowls until Monday, between now and Monday.
I hope so. I hope it's all the bowls of gumbo. So, no, it should be a fun time. Look, obviously, fun game, but it's crazy because, you're in Salt Lake now. You work for local radio, but you also have, the PFL stuff you do. And where's PFL headquartered?
Headquarters is in New York.
Okay. So, like, the people I work for, their headquarters are basically the people that there's some in D.C., some in one in Houston, and then, Los Angeles, basically. It's the only time I get to see my bosses. Like, I have to, like, put on a really good face. It's like for this entire week, I have to be in my best behavior.
Well, you'll be fine. You're generally a well-behaved individual. But I wish you an enjoyable trip to New Orleans. I'm going to try to tamp down my jealousy. I've still never been to a Super Bowl. For me, the kind of stuff you're fearing, that's fun for me. I would love to be rubbing elbows and hobnobbing at these fancy Super Bowl parties. But we digress. The game itself, we've had a little bit of time to digest this matchup and to start really evaluate. The matchup that matters most, like whether it's the positional matchup, the coach versus coach matchup, this game hinges where when it's all said and done, in your opinion?
I'll give you two things. One kind of big picture and one smaller picture that only interests me. The big picture is, I think, first downs, right? If you're able to slow down either side on first down, it puts you, I think, where you like to be defensively on third down, right? So obviously the Eagles are very much going to want to run the football on first down, play action pass, sort of those easy yards, because I don't think they want to be in third and long, right? That's when C. Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, can dial up those pressures, and Jalen Hurts is not great against those in those situations. Like, that's, you want to be Saquon Barkley dominant, and that happens a lot on first down. On the flip side, again, the Chiefs, I think, don't want to be in third and long, because then that's when, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith, that's when they get to rush the passer, right, in a more advantageous situation. So I think whoever can win first down and get that 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3 is really going to be in a good spot. And then the micro one to me is the Chiefs left guard situation, because Eagles' offensive line should be healthier. Dickerson and Jurgens will play, and that's a pretty good group, that 5. The Chiefs moved their left guard, who's an all-pro, Joe Thuney, to left tackle because they needed some help at left tackle, and it's been good. It's gone well. The downside is, left guard is worse, right? And Caliendo can battle. He's not Joe Thuney, and you got Caliendo against Jordan Davis. And the Chiefs' run game has really suffered without Thuney at left guard. And so if the Chiefs can win that battle, right, and win is, just win maybe just equals don't lose. Like, just don't lose that battle, Sean. I think that puts them in a much better spot to win the game. So that's sort of one big picture, and then maybe one little picture that just interests the former offensive lineman and myself.
Were you surprised to hear Travis Kelce say that he plans on playing for the Chiefs for multiple years after this one?
I mean, both of us plan on seeing each other when we're in the same city. It never happened. So I don't know how much I take into consideration what he said. I do think this is his last game. I felt that way for a while, unless the Chiefs come to an agreement with him like, hey, dude, we'll just sort of – you'll be on a pitch count, essentially, which, look, if you remember start the season, Rashee Rice, the Chiefs wide receiver, had like 30 targets in 3 games. Like, he was 20 in 2 games. Like, he was very clearly more of the offense. And that was very clearly because I think that they wanted him to do it. They wanted him to be the number 1 option. And then he got hurt, and Kelce had to take a lot of targets. It's just not – you just can't do that anymore. Like, can he play in the playoffs? Absolutely, but you got to get to the regular season to get there. I just don't know if he wins a 3rd championship in a row, whether he's going to decide to come back or not. And look, last offseason, he very much enjoyed himself, and he followed his lady around the world and whatnot. And I don't know how much focus there was towards football, and he certainly has earned that privilege to enjoy the life that he's created for himself. I don't know how much he will have in his body come the start of next season. And it's one of the things where a lot of players will, after the season's over, they'll say things like, I'm thinking about it, and they might even be leaning towards retirement. Then you get to May and your body starts feeling better again, and you come back and play one more year. That's impossible for Travis, but they're going to have to load manage him next year. They're going to have to just, either take off. He's probably not going to sit games like the NBA, but they just got to make sure he gets through one more season if he does play. And we can see he's slowing down a little bit, which is, totally normal for a player who's played as many snaps as he has.
Jeff Schwartz, NFL veteran, my friend, and betting expert as well, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the upcoming Super Bowl. Any of the betting lines or the prop bets or anything caught your attention yet?
Yeah, so I like a couple. I like Patrick Mahomes over 35.5 pass attempts. It's been fluctuating between 35.5 and 36. You got to lay a little bit of juice on the 35.5. I think the Chiefs just have to pass the football. I mentioned the left guard situation. They're going to run the ball very well, in my opinion. It's going to turn into a passing game, and the Chiefs do a lot of fun things in the pass game that are essentially runs in their system. So I think that's a lot of pass attempts. I think he gets over. I do like Travis Kelce over 6.5 receptions. Again, maybe he'll last for a while type of mindset, but just after a bye, man, he's so much better in the postseason, whether it's the 2 weeks before Super Bowl, whether it's a couple weeks before the divisional round game. He's so much better. He catches a ton of passes. He's targeted a bunch. And the way that the Eagles play defense, and if Oren Burks is out there on him, that leaves Kelce with good opportunities to catch the football. He's always Mahomes' go-to guy, which I think is important here. I like under 6.5 punts in this game. I don't see a lot of punts happening, Sean. So that's one I look at. Saquon Barkley under 25.5 longest rush attempt. That number. So sometimes you play a number more than like I don't know how to explain it, but you just play a number, right? So like this number for longest rush most weekends for Saquon Barkley this year has been 18.5 or 19.5. It's 25.5. Now I get the last 2 games he has played really well and had long rushes, but this is just feels too high. 6 yards basically from 2 weeks ago. So that's why I'm playing the number, Sean. I don't have a full wager on it. I think a half unit on that one. I like Chiefs second half. Highest scoring half, second half for both teams. It's just minus 115. I think it's the highest scoring half in the second half. So I know it sounds like a lot. That's six, I think I gave. So it's not a ton. I think with the options you have available, there's some head-to-head props that are not available outside of Vegas that I think are pretty cool that I just don't have access to right now using the domestic sportsbooks that are sportsbook apps. So I like a lot. I've only put money on 6 or 7 of these. And of course, you take a couple long shots. I think I have Hollywood Brown to catch the first pass of the game at plus 1,000. Not bad if the Chiefs get the ball first. So, little things like that I play. But those are the big ones I told you about are the ones I'm on heaviest.
Are we destined or doomed to a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady conversation like the LeBron James, Michael Jordan conversation?
Assuming he wins?
I mean, I think that conversation happens over the course of his career, whether he wins or not. But definitively, if he wins and goes, 3 in a row for the first time ever in NFL history, I think that ramps up the conversation significantly.
Yeah, the pushback always is that, Tom Brady beat him twice, right? When he was in New England and in Tampa Bay. So that kind of hurts the discussion. They're also just sort of different players. The Chiefs team, Sean, it's really not how you're supposed to win in the NFL, at least not how I thought you'd win, where, very clearly the regular season was just a warm-up for them. Nick Wright of First Things First, and big Chiefs fan, obviously, he always jokes that, the season starts for them in the AFC Championship game. He said the record this year is 1-0. And I always laugh at that because I think to myself, that's not the way football's supposed to work, right? You're supposed to have to win these games to get in the postseason. And if you don't give your best effort or show your best stuff, you're going to lose games. And the Chiefs just don't do that. They just kind of coast. That's why this one score winning thing to me is a little bit overblown. People say, well, they win by one score, it's how to lose at some point. But that's I guess it might, but that's not. They just play a certain brand of football where they just try to get by in the regular season. So Mahomes' numbers are never going to be as good as Tom Brady's, I think, because he's just not. He doesn't care. He's like, oh, give me the 6-yard pass, sign me up for that. His air yards per throw this year is like 33rd and a 36th quarterback. It doesn't matter though, because in the postseason, big games, he's there. He's making these big throws, and it's a different player than Tom Brady is, and so that's why the discussion is going to be had. But I think it's really not worth it. We can appreciate both, obviously, but to win 4 in your first 7 years, Brady won 3, right, and it's the first 5, I think, and then didn't win again. Brady didn't win from 2004 to 2014. He did a big break. He lost the Giants twice in that stretch. So, the discussion is going to be had. I'm sure the first segment on sports TV on Monday is going to be that, But I think it's okay to just say they're a little bit different. And the Chiefs, the way they win, man, it's not supposed to look that easy. It's not supposed to be that easy just to sort of not maybe have your best stuff all year and then turn it on the postseason.
Is Andy Reid properly rated at this point in his career?
Where would you rate him? You put him below Belichick, I think, right?
Well, sure. I just mean everyone knows he's the best coach in football right now in the NFL right now, right? But similar to the last question, is he going to be talked about with Belichick or alongside Belichick if he can continue to put this together with Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he did in Philly, too. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but he took them to all those NFC Championship games. He did five of them, and now he's been to 7 in Kansas City. I mean, that's the winning he's done. He's done it with different quarterbacks, right? He won in Philly with McNabb, obviously, but then he won with Alex Smith. He won Patrick Mahomes. He's won with, I think, Kevin Cobb in Philly. He's done a good job of winning when he's not had Patrick Mahomes or McNabb. So, I think he's probably properly rated. I think people consider him to be the second best coach of all time. I think he's sort of probably past Bill Walsh by now. And, it's also just like his ability to do – I know Kelsey's a Hall of Famer, but, just they have just like dudes at wide receiver. Like Worthy might be good at one, but he's still a rookie, though. And I think that makes it even more impressive is he's just doing this with, a B- set of wide receivers.
Who's going to be the Super Bowl MVP?
I think you have three choices to make. If the Eagles win, it's going to be Barkley or Hurts. I would imagine if they win, it's because of Barkley. And then the Chiefs' only wager to make is on Mahomes because they're just not going to give anyone else. We've seen 3 Super Bowls now where he's won. He's been Super Bowl MVP 3 times. The first game, Sean, he didn't win. It was like 120 yards, 3 touchdowns, something like that. The thing about the voting that is important to note, everyone, this is, again, if you're looking to put weights on this, remember this. The voting typically, opens up in the fourth quarter whenever it is, and sports writers are looking to vote. But most submit their vote before the end of the game. That makes sense, right? And so if you have a Damian Williams scoring a 30-yard touchdown, if Aaron Donald sacking Joe Burrow to end that game, those voters already voted. They've already voted. So, I think if you said you had to wait to the end of the game to vote, MVP voting might be different, but it's not because they need to get the votes in to make sure that they can get the trophy out to the winner 10 minutes after the game. So that matters a lot here, and that's why I think it's Barkley, Hurts, or Mahomes. I know people love to put long shots on, 500 to 1 on some defensive linemen. I mean, you have to have 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a touch. I mean, it's just impossible to win anyone outside of those 3 players I mentioned.
Before I let you go, your former head coach at the University of Oregon and former offensive coordinator at Ohio State University, Chip Kelly, is now making a bunch of money to be the Raiders' offensive coordinator. What do you think of this move?
Interesting, right? He wanted to get back in the NFL. I saw people tweeting about his resume from the last time he's in the NFL. And you saw this, you watched him. He's not the same coach. The offense is vastly different than the last time he was in the NFL. He is pro style. He is under center. I think the passing game menu probably has to expand a little bit from what we saw at UCLA, but it's certainly possible that Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the reason why that was that way. I forget who was arguing with when he got drafted about this. So the future is going to be great. I'm like, oh, he's not. He's throwing 10 interceptions and 3 starts, whatever it is. And so now he's got to get a quarterback, right? They have no quarterback. Maybe Shedur's that guy. I actually think Shedur in a Chip Kelly offense is rather interesting. I think he can tailor it pretty well to him. But Chip's an excellent run game designer, multiple personnels. But, yeah, he slowed things down, man. It's slower. It's under center a little bit. It's just run the football. It's smart passing. So I'm looking forward to it. The Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly dynamics, very interesting. 2 very different personalities in the locker room there in Vegas. So, I root for Chip, man. Hope he does well. And Ohio State's interesting. They kept their head coach, but they lost both coordinators and offensive line coach to the NFL. Offensive coordinator went to DC, went to Penn State. So, interesting to see that there's a lot of turnover there when I guess you wouldn't probably expect it.
Who's going to get Myles Garrett?
Well, the Browns say nobody, right? They keep saying they're not going to trade him. I think the Commanders have to make a very strong push. They have a ton of cap space. They could use some more veterans on that team. It's a young team, certain positions, and just they need a pass rusher. Like they're good. Jay Daniels is set, and so you build your offense around him, and you add Myles Garrett. The thing about it is he said in his letter that he wants to go to a Super Bowl contender, and that limits the possibilities. And of course, in the NFL, I don't think there's a no trade clause. They can trade him anywhere they want. I think Commanders would be a great option. I don't know who else is going to call. I'm sure everyone will just poke around a little bit. But the Commanders to me feel like a great option for a team that can win, and a team that has cap space, can really use a pass rusher. So we'll see. I mean, it's no Luka and an AD trade, but whoever gets Myles Garrett will be pretty pumped.
As a Laker fan, how do you feel about what they just accomplished?
Oh, it's awesome. I think I've said this before. I think being in the middle in sports is the worst place. When you're bad, you have hope for the future. When you're really good, obviously, you win a championship. Lakers are stuck in the middle, right? Where they're good. They're fine. They're better this year than last year and the previous year, but they're not winning a championship. Even with AD, they weren't winning a championship. And so you're just gonna I'm like meh. Like it's just like, okay, they won, cool, they won another game, but it doesn't matter, right? The Lakers are a team that should always strive for championships. And I kind of felt like when LeBron leaves, that we're gonna have to, like a years in desert, like after Kobe retired. And now I'm like, hell yeah, we got Luka. Like we're set now. I mean, you build a team around Luka and Dalton connect, and maybe Austin Reeves. I don't know how he fits in with Luka there. Like people are gonna want to play with Luka too. That's one thing that's important here. Is like, LeBron has some baggage. I don't know how. And seems to be like, I'm not sure how many players want to play with him, but I think Luka, Sean, everyone's going to play with Luka. He's going to make everyone better. And just, I think you need to motivate Luka. I mean, everyone called him fat for 48 hours. I saw him today at the press conference. Maybe he's a little husky, but he ain't fat. And he's in Los Angeles. He'll get those Erewhon shakes for $35 every day, and he'll lose some weight. Like the idea that the Lakers can't get him right, and they've been a superstar franchise for 50 years now. They'll find a way to get the shape he needs to be in. And whatnot. But look, I mean, some of those European guys, Joker's not in the best of shape. He looks like he hates playing basketball. So that's just sometimes just like how those guys look. But every time Luka was called upon in the postseason, he's been one of the best performers in NBA history in the postseason. So it's a fantastic deal for the Lakers. I can't believe they fleeced. I just don't know what the Mavericks, unless he's a Lakers double agent for all these years. I don't know how else to explain why he just called the Lakers. I mean, I get it. He wants an AD in return, but I mean, no. It's an incredible deal for the Lakers.
Yeah, it is an incredible deal for the Lakers. Last thing before I let you go. Big 12 football schedule was released today. Utah's got a tough stretch in October. We looked at BYU's schedule as well. I'm really bothered by the fact that the Holy War is being played in the middle of the season, October 18th. It's just it's after an Arizona State game for Utah. Like that, there's no special treatment for this incredible rivalry game at all on the schedule. Am I wrong for feeling that way?
Well, Oregon, Washington for years until the Big Ten was always played in the middle of the season. So, it feels odd if you're not used to it. But obviously, I mean, I got used to playing Washington in the middle of the year.
But to be fair, the Civil War and the Apple Cup were in-state rivalry games that were given their proper place.
Correct. Yes. So we did have that, and now obviously that game this year I think is week 2 or no week 3. We got Oklahoma State. It feels odd. I thought the Big 12 was basically being permanent rivalries at the end of the season. Are they not doing that?
They're doing Farmageddon in Dublin to kick off the season, which is cool. Prime television spot. The Territorial Cup is the only one that's being played in the last week of the season. It's the only one.
Weird. I don't know why. I mean, I looked at the schedule very briefly just to sort of see, like, the Big 12, though, feels like same as this year. It's going to be pretty even, right? Like, we don't know last year, I'm guilty of this. I picked Arizona State to finish, like, 3-9 because of the schedule. They had, like, the top 7 favorited teams to win the conference in their schedule, and ended up Oklahoma State ended up being terrible. So it's hard to just look at the schedules and see like who's going to be great, who's not, because I just the Big 12 feels like different every year, and I think the transfer portal plays a big part of that.
Yeah, it's wild. Enjoy your flight. Enjoy New Orleans. Thanks for joining me on the show. Have fun, buddy.
Take care, buddy. Talk to you later.
That is Jeff Schwartz headed to the Super Bowl. Poor guy. He's got to go shake hands and kiss babies at the Super Bowl parties, eat the delicious hors d'oeuvre plates. That's the one thing that I don't know that when you're someone like Jeff Schwartz, who, look, he's got some big media jobs, and he's doing a bunch of stuff for Fox, and he gets to go to the Super Bowl every year, and he gets to go to these media events every year. You know what people don't appreciate, Zach? They don't appreciate the trays of delightful single-bite foods that are always present at those things.
Those are so yummy too. Like,
it's the best.
It's the best.
You know who does appreciate that? All of you out here listening. You know who does appreciate those things?
Who?
Kyle Whittingham.
Oh yeah.
He is a guy that when we would go down to Pac-12 Media Days, and when I was working for SiriusXM, they would have us, for whatever reason, we get invited to the coaches' dinner the night before, and they always have a little cocktail hour. And there was always two people in the room who were not drinking any alcohol, but were just noshing. We're just smashing every single bite of the appetizers that would come around on those trays. It was me, and it was Coach Witt. That's probably the number one bonding experience I've ever had with Coach Witt, is standing there, and they bring the little meatball trays around, and everyone else is like, oh, no thanks, no thanks. And both me and Coach Witt would be like, yep, I'll have some more. I just nom, 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 nom. He's a fat kid at heart, except he works out every day, so he's not actually a fat kid. All right, big thanks to Jeff Schwartz for joining us. We'll take a quick one here when we come back. I really do want to dive deeper into this Utah football schedule for the folks who've turned in now for this third hour of the show. There's a lot to look at, a lot to digest, and first and foremost, the injustice of the Holy War not being given special placement. Schedule release day this morning. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. this question out on Twitter earlier today. The worst timing you've ever experienced on like a significant life change or life event. Apparently, Luka Doncic had just closed on a $15 million home purchase in Dallas when he found out he'd been traded. Now, when you make as much money as Luka Doncic makes, that's not the end of the world, right? I mean, $15 million is always $15 million, but unlike most of us who have to like take out mortgages and pay this thing down over 30 years, he can write a check for that because he makes more than that money. And he's going to be fine. He's going to make $500 million at least over the course of his NBA career. But that was disheartening. You just getting ready to close on a house. You just close on a house, and there's like, ha-ha, you don't get to live in it. You're being traded to L.A., where he's going to buy another $15 million house or whatever. So I put the question out there. I put my own example out there. I actually, my wife, we met while I was doing this show, doing a show, I should say, on ESPN 700 radio, whatever that was, 10 years ago. And my contract was coming up. It was running out when I met my wife. And we have this first date, and it's fantastic, and it's wonderful. And the rest is history. Obviously, we ended up getting married. We have 3 beautiful children. I'm campaigning for more. We'll see if that ever happens. Like 10 days after I met my wife and we went on our first date and we started dating, my contract runs out. They don't renew it. I become unemployed like 10 days after meeting the woman I would eventually marry. Not exactly the best first impression you can give to someone's family. We're just like, hey, this is my new boyfriend. Oh, what do you do for work? Well, I'm actually unemployed. So I asked people to give me the timing, the worst timing that they've experienced. So we got some good answers. We'll read some for you in our next segment. We'll get Zach's worst life change timing as well. We'll get there in about 15 minutes, 10 minutes. The Utah football schedule and the BYU football schedule and all Big 12 football schedules were released today. This morning, Utah's schedule looks like this: at UCLA to start the season. Cal Poly comes here. I actually have a deep affection for the Cal Poly football program. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Delmer Scales, played football at Cal Poly. I've got his Letterman jacket hanging in my office back home. It's like one of my prized possessions. He was the man, and he's a Cal Poly Mustang. So was John Madden, by the way. They were teammates there. Fun fact for you.
Did not know that.
Zach. So Cal Poly at Wyoming, which is just what a nightmare of a – that's a bad game. You got to go on the road to Wyoming, an old Mountain West Conference rival. No, thank you. Texas Tech at home at West Virginia. I wonder how many of you plan on making that trip. How many have already made the trip to West Virginia? Probably not many. That's one in the new Big 12 confines. That's a long haul, but might be worth it. Probably still nice weather, right? Leaves starting to change in the mountains of West Virginia. That's September 27th. Then you got a bye week. I think that's good placement for the bye week. You go 5 games in a row, then a bye week. So at that point, you'll have been playing football consecutively all of August, all of September. Perfect time for a bye week. Off the bye week, it's Arizona State. After that, October 18th, on the road in Provo at BYU, and then you come back home to take on Colorado. Arizona State at BYU, Colorado, and then another home game against Cincinnati, and then a bye week. October 18th is not where the Holy War should be played. Brett Yormark, I know you're a big listener to the show. Mark Harlan, Tom Holmoe, get together, pound on Brett Yormark's door, and say, fine, we'll do it this way in 2025, but for the rest of our existence as conference rivals in the same conference, under your supervision, Brett Yormark, you will play this game the last week of the season in a primetime television spot, if it can't be the last week of the season, or the very first week of the season in some type of kickoff classic situation. This game needs to be put on a pedestal by the Big 12 Conference, and it clearly is not. This is evidence, moving it even earlier in the season than you saw it last year, this is evidence that the conference doesn't prioritize BYU, doesn't prioritize Utah, doesn't prioritize the historic rivalries. It's ridiculous that this game is being played here to last year. BYU's got UCF end of the season. Utah finishes their year with Kansas. Texas Tech, West Virginia finishes their year with Kansas. Texas Tech, West Virginia. You know that one's a storied rivalry. TCU and Cincinnati. You see the point I'm trying to make here? You're not doing this correctly, Big 12 schedulers. Priority needs to be placed on these rivalry games because we're running out of the great ones in college football as conference opponents. There's no more Apple Cup as a conference game. There's no more Civil War as a conference game. There's very few, the Red River Shootout, like there's very few games that still carry major conference implications that the two teams, more years than not, are going to be big-time players in the conference championship race. That should be the case next year for the Big 12. If BYU can stay consistent, if Utah can bounce back to where we expect them to be, good for you, Arizona State. Arizona State got the best schedule and the best placement of its rivalry game, and they deserve that as the reigning conference champions. But everybody else should still be given the gift of the Holy War in rivalry week. And every other rivalry, such as they still exist in this Big 12 conference, should be given a little bit more love. Kansas State, they don't play the final week of the season. Farmageddon, Iowa State, K-State, is going to kick off the season in week 0. That's going to be an overseas neutral site game in Dublin. That's kind of fun. Like, yeah, go ahead. Put the Holy War in a situation like that. Probably not in Dublin, but put it somewhere where its television broadcast window is kind of like a standalone. That's a favor you're doing to that Farmageddon game. That's a good place to put it. Kansas State, Kansas, October 25th. What?
What is going on with these schedulers?
You're doing it wrong, Big 12 schedulers.
I agree with you. I agree.
All right. I got that off my chest. Want to remind everyone out there that our ESPN 792.1 FM cash kickoff continues. Your shot to win $1,000 of cash to pay the bills. That's right now. Text the word KIDS, KIDS, to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest. KIDS, 508-777-1000. All right, I'm going to give away some Incubus tickets. They're coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater July 12th. A couple of tickets to Incubus, if you can answer the question correctly that I'm about to give you, 877-353-0700. And I'll read some of the responses on the worst timing life changes ever came across your plate. Worst possible timing. Like when I met my wife and then was jobless 10 days later. Your examples of that at 877-353-0700 and at Real OC Sports. Wrapping it up with a little crosstalk next on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Sean O'Connell Show, wrapping things up here on ESPN 700. A couple orders of business. Reminder that Crosstalk, which is coming with Spence Checketts, is brought to you by our good friends at Advanced Window Products. Sales, installation, warranty coverage is all in-house. No middleman markups, $2,500 off 10 windows or more at advancedwindows.com. Buy direct from the only local manufacturer at Advanced Window Products and tell them that OC sent you. Topical trivia, 2 tickets to Incubus at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. If you could tell me, what Big 12 opponent does Utah face the week before they play the Holy War game against BYU? It's this team and then BYU on the schedule for the 2025 season. 877-353-0700. 2 tickets to Incubus if you know the answer to that question. I also put the question out there, what's the worst timing for a personal life change you've ever experienced? Got some good replies. This one from 1624. Last year I found out I was having my 3rd baby. 3 days later, I got laid off. Oh. Thankfully, I was able to find a job, and they were very cool with me taking a week off to take care of my baby. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that employer, your new employer, the second employer, gave you some time to take care of the baby. Got some good ones on Twitter as well when I asked this question. And again, all of this inspired by Luka allegedly closing on a $15 million house in Dallas, and then he found out that he had been traded. So that is just bad life timing. Couple of responses that were pretty interesting. This one would gut you. I mean, got a job offer in another country. Last day of my 2-week notice, 3 days before moving from my apartment, a hurricane hit the island I was going to work on and wiped out the office/job I was supposed to have. So you quit your job to take a new one. You're about to live on the islands. You enjoy that beach life, and then a hurricane wipes it off the face of the planet. That is rough. This one happened to one of our fighters in the PFL, and he weighed in on this. Was set to close on a house in Phoenix when COVID canceled the season. So the loan officer denied me because I had no upcoming income. As a fighter, he needs to fight, and COVID canceled our season. Oh. 2 years later, houses on the same street were selling for $150,000 more. Burns me up. Ouch! COVID did that to the real estate market. Lots of correct responses to the trivia question, by the way. Arizona State, then BYU, then Colorado. A very tough stretch for Utah in that October portion of the season. Spence Checketts and the driver coming up next. He joins me here in studio now. Hello, Spence.
Why in the hell is Utah BYU on October 18th?
Thank you, Spence.
What are we doing?
Thank you.
And BYU's final game is UCF. Utah's final game,
the traditional rival, Kansas,
is Kansas. You can swap games. You can get Brett, our guy, Brett Yormark, friend of ours, Big 12 Media Day shout out. And I know he listens to the station. So hello, Brett. How are you? Let's make this happen. It is beyond dumb. I don't remember. Has Utah BYU ever been played in October? If it has, it hasn't been for a long, long time.
Yeah, I don't know if they have.
I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. Maybe we can get our ESPN stats and info guy in there. Because we do have a guy in there to look stuff up.
Yeah, I'm this guy.
Zach's our ESPN stats and info guy?
Well, it's Porter in the afternoons, but right now it's Zach. So look up real quick, Zach. Last time Utah BYU played October, I could not think of it. Truly. It's so dumb.
I'm so bothered by it. The conference has 4 really good rivalry games still surviving in its borders.
Right.
And only one of those is being played the final week of the season. That's the Territorial Cup, Arizona State. It's the only one that's been given the proper treatment of rivalry games. And they did a good job with Farmageddon opening the season in a neutral site game that's on a big television window, week 0. That's cool. Play the Holy War there if you want to. First game of the season or last game of the season, Spence. It needs to be there. Now that your conference opponents, I was fine with them shoehorning this into the schedule when Utah was a Pac-12 team and BYU was an independent, and you just had to find a week to put it in. But you are conference opponents, and this is one of 3 or 4 really good rivalry games that the Big 12 has to offer. This is the best one, the most interesting one, the one that I think year in and year out is still going to have conference championship implications. Stop doing this.
And for Big 12 people that were unfamiliar and skeptical, did you watch what happened last year? It may have been the best game in the entire Big 12 all season. There were some great rivalry games, but Utah, BYU here in Salt Lake, the drama, the number was through the roof. The ratings were through the roof. And I know a lot of people that are, and I always enjoy talking to people that are just learning about the unique nature of Utah, BYU football and why it's such a cool game and an excellent rivalry. But you heard a lot of people in the Big 12 saying, well, we've heard of it. We know that it's intense, but we've never really experienced it. And the game last year was a perfect game to introduce to people in the Big 12 what Utah BYU football is about. And for it to be buried in the middle of October is wild to me. I mean, that's the main takeaway, because here's the other thing. I've seen a lot of stuff online like, who has an easier schedule, BYU or Utah? We don't know. We have no idea. Let me know who's picked 16th this year so I can just pick them to win the conference. Like, we have no clue who has the easier or the harder schedule. First glance, it looks like Utah does. But we thought last year BYU did, and that was kind of flipped on its head. But yeah, my main takeaway is that Utah BYU game, middle of October, and it seems like it would be so easy to switch in and switch out.
Yeah, I wanted to be like, ooh, schedule release day. Let's see the 4-game stretch that's most important. Are these bye weeks good? Like, BYU got a bad bye week placement, and they got their rivalry game in October. Utah got Arizona State, BYU, Colorado back to back to back. It just, we're being punished, and I don't like it.
Some weird early buys, to your point, like week 3 buys, 2 buys, per team, I suppose, isn't a bad thing if you're going to play a long season. Where do you think BYU will be ranked preseason? Top 20?
Yeah, for sure. The way too early that's out right now on ESPN has them at 9. I think that's a little too high.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to be, them, Iowa State, Arizona State. I don't think Utah is going to be a preseason top 25 team, or if they are, it'll be between 20 and 25. But, the Big 12 Conference is going to have like 5 teams ranked.
Yeah,
BYU,
Colorado's got to be close, right?
Yeah, Colorado will probably be somewhere there, although they lost so much. Like, look, BYU is going to be either the highest or second highest ranked preseason Big 12 team. And then you got to play the games. Last year, we know who was the highest ranked preseason team. And it was Utah and then either Kansas State or Oklahoma State, depending on the poll. And Kansas State was the only team that played near its expectations, either on the high or low end in the Big 12 Conference last year.
Do you and at some point I just have to stop doing this, because the home schedule this year for the Utes and then your road options, I mean, outside of UCLA, I don't know, man. I saw the schedule. The first thing I thought was I still missed the Pac-12.
Yeah, well.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to take some country roads to West Virginia?
Well, look, I'm not flyover country, those are my people. I'm not anti-Midwest, Sean. Don't paint me with that brush.
Well, West Virginia would, I think, it'd be a cool one. Like Morgantown, there's vibes there. That'd be a good one to go to.
All right.
Another Thanksgiving trip for BYU fans. I guess UCF has to come here this year.
That's true. We got Lawrence. We've got Waco. We've got Provo, Morgantown, Laramie.
Waco, you can do the whole Chip and Joanna Gaines fixer-upper thing.
Yeah. Well, Pasadena for UCLA is fine. But let me repeat that. Your road trip options as a Utah football fan this year: Laramie, Wyoming, Morgantown, West Virginia, Provo, Utah. Sounds like I'm writing a John Denver song. Waco, Texas, and Lawrence, Kansas. All due respect to Riles. I missed the Pac-12.
Okay.
I'm sorry for being that guy, but I'm going to be that guy.
I have your answer, by the way. 1967 was the last time they played in October.
1967.
All right.
Well done, ESPN Stats and Info.
Good job, Zach.
Yeah,
all right.
We've got a new department we just hired. 1967, the last time BYU and Utah played football in October. It's wild.
Without getting too deep in any sort of personal life stuff, the worst timing for a life change you've ever experienced, like Luka with his house closing and then he moved, or he got traded 3 days later?
You're asking the wrong guy this question, man.
Well, that's why I said, like I met my wife and then lost this job 10 days later.
Oh, that's right.
Became unemployed right after we went on like our second date, and I'm like, oh wow, I like this girl.
Yeah.
And then it was like, Oh, I'm fired. Dang it.
That's rough. When I was 25, I was told I was going to die of a cancerous brain tumor. That didn't go well. Well, I should say it actually went better than I was expected. It was expected to go because I'm here.
Yeah. Actually worked out okay.
Yes and no. It was a rather large life interruption.
Okay.
I spent a number of months in the hospital. We could keep going as far as how this really.
I was maybe aiming for something a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah,
you
I don't
know?
really
Like-
have a lot of lighthearted. Like for me, for whatever reason,
Okay.
when the changes come, they're pretty
right.
massive and they're pretty life interrupting type stuff.
My fault for asking the question, but
Let me think about that. But everything that came to my mind was a pretty catastrophic life interruption that I've suffered. But you know what? I'm alive. I'm here, and we're going to do some radio today.
all right. We will look forward to that.
Thanks for bringing that up, Sean.
Yeah. That's a fun way to start the drive.
Stay tuned for
And to
more
close
uplifting
out-
radio.
And to close out the Sean O'Connell Show. Thanks, everybody who joined us, and thanks for listening. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.